across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
A very, very good morning to you. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 10 o'clock. I'm now just going to think about sodding bacon sandwiches for the rest of the morning, thanks to Ian Collins and your chats on the show this morning. But there we are. Try not to. Do you know what I need to do? I need to find a young person working on minimum wage to make my bacon sarnie for me. Or maybe we could send out a young person on minimum wage from the office. Don't think we've got anyone on minimum wage to go out and get one for me because, you know, find someone to do the job. But apparently you can't get a job if you are a young person. Latest stats, absolutely extraordinary. More than 1 million young people, that's 16 to 24-year-olds, are NEETs. We've heard that phrase for a lot, haven't we? Long time. NEETs, not in employment, education or training of any kind. Just doing absolutely sod all day. I've got to be honest with you, if I had one of those in my house, they wouldn't be doing sod all day. But that's just my house. Now, I wonder if that might be one of the most telling things in this, because this new report from Alan Milburn, he's a former Labour minister, of course you remember when he was Health Secretary under Tony Blair. A lot of people from that era seem to be talking up at the moment. He's done a new report commissioned by the Work and Pensions Secretary right now about McFadden. But this review basically is warning that 1 in 6 young people will not be in education, employment or training within 5 years unless urgent action is taken. The review says the government must reform welfare and face condemning a lost generation of young people to a life on the dole. I mean, I don't have any hope whatsoever that anything is going to be done. I think the problems are wide-ranging, but I think crucially there is one key aspect that is affecting a lot of these young people not working or in employment or training that's barely touched on in a very, very lengthy review. We'll talk about that in a moment. Also going to be talking about Andy Burnham. He's accused Tony Blair of not understanding what's going on after the former PM intervened in the Labour leadership crisis. We've also got another U-turn from Andy Burnham. He loves a U-turn. I mean, you know, flip-flop Andy was what he used to be called when he ran for the Labour leadership a couple of times before. We'll talk about that. Plus, new migration figures. I mean, extraordinary. New figures showing the share of babies born to migrant parents now is 4 in 10. 4 in 10 of the babies born last year were born to migrant parents. That is an extraordinary statistic. That has massively changed the demographics of our country. And again, you know, not something that anyone was asked about or agreed to when they did find out about it. We'll talk about all of that. Now, I want to hear your thoughts on all of the big stories we are talking about, but in particular, but you know, you get to decide. You know, it's your job to decide what you want to call in on. But in particular, I want to know, given this report from Alan Milburn saying 1 in 6 young people won't be in work or training in 5 years, and warning that we've got a lost generation, he's calling for urgent action. I want to know from you, how do we fix this? Whether you're an employer, whether you're a parent, whether you are one of those young people. I mean, pick up the phone. You've got sod all else to do. I don't know what time, you know, ITV This Morning starts or whatever. I want to hear from you. I want to hear from you if you've never had a trouble getting a job. If you're young, if you're old, let's say an employer, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You work in a benefits office. Want to know what you think. Work at a university. Just graduated, got no qualifications. Give us a call. 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch on. You can text the word talk and your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at the national rate and text cost 1 standard network rate message. Delighted to say a man I'm sure has never struggled to find work is Philip Ingram, MBE, former senior military intelligence officer. Morning to you. Good morning to you. Now, I saw this report. We get it under embargo, so I read the report last night, and we've got these latest stats which are out in the last half hour showing that more than 1 million young people are out of work or out of education. And you know, I mean, just quite terrifying, those stats. And this report is basically identifying the problem, according to Alan Milburn, and then later in the year he's going to talk about what needs to be done. And he does talk about, you know, this is a generation, by the way, not really quite hit by AI yet. The AI thing, that is coming down the line for these young people. But we're talking about young people, most of them haven't got a degree, but quite a lot of them have. We've got a lot of young people who've not got decent qualifications from school. They've maybe been carers to their family members. They come from disadvantaged families or from areas where there just really aren't very many jobs. And I've it's certainly easy to get a job in some places than others. We know that. There are kids who've got mental health problems, the ADHD, the this, the that. All the other things. Now, all these other things are in there, and they all get talked about. But here's the thing. The one thing, and I've gone to the report, and I did a full, AI check on it about what is going on in terms of all the things that get mentioned. And the one thing that Alan Milburn doesn't mention in detail is family. He talks about kids coming from poorer families, from disadvantaged families, from being carers for families, all of this stuff. The one thing I can't see in this report, and maybe I've missed it, but I couldn't see, is talking about family responsibility, parents' responsibility to ensure that their children are employable. Because Alan Milburn, in all the interviews he's done this morning, and he was on the show on this station as well, all the interviews, he keeps saying the majority of young people, they want to work. When we do a poll, they say they want to work. Well, they say they want to work, but what jobs are they willing to do? And do they have the work ethic that makes them employable? Are they kids who, frankly, if they did apply, or they turned up in your cafe or your workplace and said, "Hi, can I come and work for you? Can I get a job? I'll do something for free for a week just to show you I'm employable." Are they people who are actually employable, or are they on a day when it's sunny on Thursday, so I won't pop in, or I'll call in sick on a Monday because it's raining, or I'm just feeling a bit anxious today, so I won't turn up, or complaining about everything, or a lot of young people telling you how you should be running your business rather than just shutting up, frankly, and making the tea as they've been told to do. I worry that our youngsters, lots of them, are not being given the skills to go out into the world to be employable. What do you think?
Oh, I agree with you 100%. I used to mentor students, third year students from the University of Wolverhampton, it surprised me how badly prepared many of them were for going out into work. That's badly prepared through education, badly prepared through family, badly prepared through university. And that is what's leading to. And I'll put that down to so many different things. Family, parents, 100%. That is a big part of the problem. But it's also society, it's communities, you get people working through their networks to get jobs and bits and pieces. But again, it's the education process. How can a teacher who's come through education, who goes into education, who goes back into education, then give students career advice or advice about life skills? It just doesn't happen. We're
getting a bit of feedback on the things. Can you move your phones and things that I think might be interfering? Or move in the other direction, away from. I don't know whether that might be part of the issue. I'm not quite sure. We're getting some. I don't know if you're hearing it. If you are, we're trying to sort it out. But there's a few funny noises in our ears. But I'm sure we can try.
I can hear that. Yes.
We can try and sort it out. I hope you're not hearing it at home. But so it's slightly distracting. But this is the thing. I'm thinking like, what did I learn from my parents? You got up and you went to school every day, and you had a sniffle, or you had a fall, or raise your knee. You go, okay. Off you go, put a plaster on, off you go, you carry on. I know so many young people from a generation, and even frankly, even, at my daughter's school, parents who should know a lot better, who've done well in life, and, kids having, they're not feeling very well. What do you mean they're not feeling very well? Are they well enough to go to school? Send them to school. I find that attitude very strange. My daughter has seen my husband and me, just get up and go to work. Well, it doesn't matter what the shift is. Is it a Friday night shift on a Sunday paper? Is it getting up at 4:20 to go to work? You get up, you do the job. Okay, you come back from holiday and the flight's been delayed by 6 hours. You've all had 3 hours sleep. Yeah, it doesn't matter. You get up and you go to school, you go to work. And I do think there's an attitude. Now, I'm sorry, I came in thinking to the office this morning, thought, oh God, am I such a little old fuddy-duddy? Go, in my day. Because I do think things are harder now. I think I don't think it's as hard. Don't think it's as hard as the generation who fought the First World War and the Second World War, by the way, people. I do find this idea that this generation, they've had it so much harder. Absolute codswallop have they had it on. I think the problem is they've had it easier. And when I came in, I thought the youngsters in the office were going to disagree with me. And it was fascinating to hear them talk about actually some of the work experience people we've had in. I'm telling you, you can tell within 5 minutes if these people are going to be any good and employable. The people who just turn up when they feel like it. Leave leave when they feel like it, or just don't turn up for a day. Basic expectations of manners. The sighing when you ask them to do a menial task. I'm sorry, I do plenty of menial tasks. I don't think getting tea out for anybody. Oh, for you a cup of tea. It's not a menial task. It's something that, that people just do. An awful lot of young people have this fear that they want to work. Yes, absolutely. And if you can give me a job playing a Game Boy and eating chocolate and crisps all day, and it's only a 5-minute walk from a sofa, then I'll do it. But actually a job that you're going to have to get up and travel maybe for 45 minutes, you're going to have to, frankly, be told what to do by someone who's a bit of a beep beep, well, tough. That's what you're going to have to do. It's going to be unsociable hours. It's not going to pay very well, and it's quite boring, repetitive work. But yeah, that's what you have to do to get the experience, to get on the rungs of the ladder, to get where you want to do. I don't think that a lot of young people are willing to do that. I think they'd rather sit at home on a Game Boy, mum doing their laundry, food on the table, and I think far too many parents think that's okay and feel that their children need to be sort of wrapped in cotton wool. I think the teachers do it as well. Oh, you feel a bit anxious, don't go to school. Feel a bit anxious, we'll give you an extra hour for your exam. Everyone must have prizes. No one's allowed to fail. Everyone being told that they're special and they've got a talent. No, most people aren't special by definition. And you know what? Most people don't have a talent. Sorry, have you been in the real world? Do you think most of the people that you work with, or that you walk down the street with, or you're on the train or the bus with in the morning, is like uniquely special and talented? I mean, give me a break. I think we have created a generation of young people whose expectations of life are vastly exceeding their likely lot in life. And I think that's a really unfair thing to do to kids. I almost don't blame them. Yeah,
and government policies make it worse, because your government policies now enabling anyone to go sick from day one and get statutory sick pay. It's making it more difficult to sack people. It's making it more difficult, and therefore employers don't want to bring people in. But again, I don't, for the first time in many, many years, as I walk down the high streets of lots of towns and villages, and even through some of the areas of Birmingham where I live, I see in hundreds of stores and in factories and all the rest of it, advertisements for jobs. So the jobs are out there. So I'm not getting this logic.
There are jobs out there.
They're just not the jobs that these kids want.
Would you rather employ a 28-year-old Pole who's got a degree and a work ethic, who's got 10 years work experience, than an 18-year-old who's just decided to roll out of bed after playing their Game Boy till 3 in the morning? And I don't want to have a downer on young people. I genuinely think we have simply not equipped them and told them how life works.
Well, I did have a downer on young people until I came into Talk Towers. I'm not just saying that because I'm here, but I work on a number of different floors through the place, and the young people that are working in there have got the same sort of work ethic. They've got greater talent than my generation had, and everything else, and they put themselves out to do the job. So that amongst certain sections of society, that work ethic is definitely there. Why it's not translating elsewhere, that's down to schools, parents, society, government policy, and government policy is making it worse. And that's the thing.
I mean, exactly. The cost of employing someone, the ability to get rid of people if they aren't really good, and this idea that bosses aren't going around just sacking people for the sake of it. They get rid of people because they're not doing their job, and they're creating issues with other members of staff, because you can't have someone not turning up when they feel like it and slacking all day. I really do think that we need action on this, and the AI is going to hit even harder, but I don't think this government is remotely capable, indeed the last government, remotely capable of dealing with this. No, and I think an awful lot of, frankly, a lot of parents are. Also, there's a lot of companies now do this sort of 360 review. Like they're asking young people, what do you think? Like, I'm sorry, you're 18, your opinion counts for... Yes, sir, no, sir, how high, sir? Those are the only responses to when you're told what to do in your first, frankly, 10 jobs. I'm as bullshit as they come. It's never occurred to me that isn't how you behave when you whether I was washing up whether I was, stuffing envelopes, whether I was chopping onions in a burger takeaway, whether I was waitressing, whether I was pulling pints in a pub. No job, by the way, I ever thought was beneath me, and still don't. No job that I ever thought wasn't worth doing, and also no job that wasn't worth doing well. Turning up on time with a smile, right attitude, appropriately attired, working the full shift, yes sir, no sir to the boss. I think that we have a whole generation of young people who don't know any of that.
They don't.
And I don't know whose job it is other than the parents. But if the parents aren't doing it, the schools need to be doing it. And I don't think the schools are doing that job anymore.
I don't think people understand how it doesn't matter whether you're at the bottom of the tree or the top of the tree, a big cog or a little cog. The tiniest little cog is as important as the big cog, because if it isn't turning right, the most junior person that's in there, then the rest of the machine is not going to work. And that's the attitude we need to get into people.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about more stories in just a few moments. We're going to take a quick break. Lots of calls already coming in on this. Not surprised. 0344 499 1000. Particularly love to hear from you. If you're a young person going, hold on a minute, Julia and Bill, you're talking absolute nonsense. I've been applying, I've sent 20 applications, I've even got a degree, and I cannot get 20 applications a day, and I can't get a job. I do want to hear from you. Please tell us why we're wrong. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back. This is Talk, the Home of Common Sense. 10:21 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram's still with me. We sorted out whatever that noise was, so that's good. Hope that wasn't bothering you too much. Might have just been in our ears, but we got it all sorted out.
It's just me whining on.
Yeah, it was your inner soul going, why am I here? Why am I here? But lots of calls on the board. I want to hear from people, for or against what we're saying. But I mean, I don't think we're the only people saying it. Look, there's definitely been issues in terms of these, young unemployed people, which involve, government policy. Like, too easy to get benefits, too easy to get people diagnosed with, your ADHDs, your autisms, and, I mean, I'm sorry, the idea that we've just suddenly in the last 5 years got this massive explosion in these things is a load of absolute nonsense. It's rubbish. And we need to stop doing it. And it's lockdown. Well, it didn't happen in any other country. So we're uniquely impacted, are we? It's just a load of absolute nonsense. We've got to face up to it. And the ability I don't think anyone under the age of 25 should be able to access welfare at all, frankly. I think at this point we have to just go, no, your parents' job. Sorry, sorry. If you want to bring your youngsters up not to be able to work, then fine, you'll pay for them.
Or join the military.
Yeah, join the military. But here's the thing, also these stats as well, and in terms of for every young British person who is hired, 27 young migrants are hired. Now, here's the thing. We had this with EU migration. That's been, not completely cut off, but a lot of those people are still here. But we're also seeing it with non-EU immigration. By the way, also a huge number of illegal migrants in this country working, taking a lot of those sort of cash-in-hand jobs, those little jobs that you could have got as your work experience. Employers are going, yeah, I'll do it off the books. It's much, much cheaper. People who can't complain, don't need minimum wage. What a surprise. Where frankly, these people, these youngsters, you can't compete with that. Now, this was a just absolutely completely conscious policy decision by Tony Blair, who was the Prime Minister when Alan Milburn, who carried out this review into NEETs when he was Health Secretary, to basically bring in an entire generation of young Poles, Slovaks, Romanians and others who've got the work ethic, no doubt at all. Those young people coming here and working, but at the end of the day, they were competing with our youngsters. There was no pressure on employers to train up youngsters from Britain, because you could just hire someone who was already trained.
But it's not that they weren't competing, because our youngsters were going, well, I could be bothered. That's the trouble, and this is where it needs to be instilled. To get that work ethic to go out, and as you've said before, it needs to come from the family, it needs to come from the community, it needs to come from society, but most importantly, it needs to come from schools. And having mentored, as I said, for almost 10 years, third-year students, the standard of the CVs, the standards of their basic understanding of what it was like going out to work was shocking, and they'd been through the whole careers teams at the university, and it was absolutely terrible. But
also, the amount of times people say, I've sent out 100 job applications and I've had no replies at all. A lot of these sifted by AI now, and they're like, well, yeah, I mean, that's I get that. That's not fair. But that said, the number of times when someone has written to me and asked for help with their journalistic career, and I have offered help, given help, offered work experience, help with CVs and things like that, don't even bother replying. Don't even bother replying. I mean, excuse me? I mean, and I've written back, gone, hey, hello, you asked me for help. I'm using my time to help you. I've never even met you, and I'm offering to help because I think, you should always offer to help somebody who bothers to ask. I don't care. I don't need to know your parents, not even that. Just, you want to say, hey, I'd like to get into this career. What can I do to help you? But not even bothering to reply when you've asked someone for help.
Well, that's ridiculous. But again, you get all these statistics where people say I've applied for 100 jobs and got nothing back again.
Jobs have you applied for?
But they've filled a form in online and
it's
hit
not
go.
The same.
It's not the same as going, I've got my CV, I'm going to walk into that place, or I'm going to use some of the online tools. You can use LinkedIn or other things to find the head of HR, or the head of the department in the company that you want to work in, and you write to them and ask them for some advice. You don't ask them for a job, ask them for some advice.
Advice or work experience. Can I come in and then turn up appropriately?
Correct.
And I know.
There's
what
so
can
many
you
ways
do?
of doing it.
What can you do? People who definitely don't want a job. Junior doctors. BMA has announced more junior doctors strike later this month. I have to say, I'm getting really fed up with this. Yeah. They're saying it's about a lot of training roles and things, and I agree with them. There is an issue. We've got a load of trained doctors who can't get jobs. That's madness. Yeah. There is something going wrong. Well,
if we've got a load of trained doctors who can't get jobs, then,
why are we importing
so many doctors? There's something not adding up in the way all the statistics are being presented and analysed. It just does not compute.
Can we also just talk about Andy Burnham? He has hit back at Tony Blair, but his big criticism of Keir Starmer and all the Labour leadership candidates basically say they don't, they're getting it wrong and what they need to do. Andy Burnham has hit back saying Tony Blair doesn't know what's going on.
I never thought I would ever hear myself say this, but I agree with Tony Blair.
A lot of people have been saying this.
And the big thing that Tony Blair said was the government came in with no plan. It's got no plan to go forward, so there's no point in changing a leader who hasn't got a plan. I sat down with someone who's a government minister today, 9 months before the election, and asked him about when the planning was going on. And he turned around to me and said, we're not doing any. And I've talked to Keir about this personally.
I thought Sue Gray was supposed to be doing it.
No, he said, we're not doing any. And he said, I've talked to Keir about this yesterday, and he's confirmed we're not doing any because we're going to spend the first 3 years blaming the previous lot, and that'll give us time to settle our new ministers into their different departments, and we'll work our plans from there. That's why we're in up the creek without the paddle.
Thank you for the editing there. I want to hear from you. Do give us a call. Let us know what you think. 0344 499 1000, particularly on the NEETs. There are loads of other stories, but this has got to be the biggest story in town today. Let's go to Matthew, who is in Warrington and wants to have his say on these 1 in 6 young people who in 5 years' time, and by the way, it's almost that now, will not be in work or employment, work, education or training, the NEETs. Matthew, good morning to you. What do you want to say?
The problem is, Julie, with parents now, they want to give a diagnosis for the kids because they don't understand that, you give your little 4-year-old a can of iron brew and he's suddenly climbing the walls and screaming at the full moon. And then they go to the doctors on a telephone call, and the doctor just says, oh, yeah, he's got ADHD, he's got PTSD, he's got this. And then they spend the next 10, 15 years blaming the ADHD on the kid's behaviour, and the kid is allowed to run away with it. Yep. And then, I've got a son, you've got boys.
I've got a daughter.
Sorry. Well, the boys are slow learners, so we had a bit bonkers when we were teenagers and all this. And then all of a sudden, the light bulb moment comes on. You're 18, 19. You want a job. You want to go and work in the environment. You want to go and join the army. You go and apply for the army because there's on there ADHD. Yeah. And they won't touch you. They won't touch you with a barge pole because you've got an issue that your mum or parents picked up 10 years ago because you like drinking Fanta.
Yeah. They haven't got ADHD like Elon Musk has got it, where he just I'm too busy colonising Mars and creating supercars and running X. I mean, this is the thing. I've got a really good friend who's a head teacher in a city comp. I mean, this place is properly bad. I mean, the kids of, prostitutes and pimps. I mean, we are talking kids who are really coming from bad backgrounds. And he says, I've got about 6 kids who, frankly, if they don't get their ADHD medicine, we're all in trouble. The rest of them, he says, is just rubbish parenting. It is just, there's no bedtime, there's no meal times, there's no proper food. They're on their phones, they're on their Game Boys, they're drinking, as you say, the fizzy drinks, living on rubbish. And he goes, it's just, you can literally just see it happening before your eyes.
My daughter wants to go into nursing. She's got to do a placement at the local primary school. She's in reception now, and they've got kids young kids, small backgrounds that are non-vocal. Yeah, they don't speak to anyone. They've been brought in. She said to me the other day, she's got this little boy there. He doesn't speak. She went out into town shopping. She's standing with her mum and dad. And he said hello to her, and she went, "You can't speak." And he went, "Oh, really?" It's being hoodwinked. Most schools have got a special room now that's like a soft cell.
Oh, yeah.
They take the kids in because they're being violent and they're punching kids, and they take them in there. And what do you expect when your kid's on his phone playing Pokemon at 6 a.m, eating a Mars bar? Yeah,
no, I'm with you. I really am completely with you. And I know that won't account for everybody. And there'll be someone who goes, oh, but, my kid's got... No, you can't deal with the kids who've got genuine, disabilities or mental health problems if you are basically just dealing with those. I think we're just about to go to Matthew. Thank you for that. We're just about to go to another call, but we just lost that call. If we can get another call on the line, that would be great. Richard says, put the minimum wage for younger people back down and abolish income tax for them. No, I think everyone should be paying income tax. I'm more fashioned on that. Retail and hospitality would love to employ young people, but can't take the risk for the same wage as somebody who's in their 30s with a mortgage. They will turn up every day. I mean, you nailed it there, Richard. Mike says we need more investment into the country and lower taxes for companies to create more work for people. Holden says our current welfare and job centre system treats the working class like chattel. We need universal basic income. Holden, you, my love, are part of the problem. Let's go to Richard, who is in Belfast. Hello, Richard. What do you want to say?
Good morning, Julia.
Morning.
Good to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you.
Also, Julia, can I start by saying I wanted to thank your guest for what he's done for the country. So.
Philip Ingram, of course, people who just tuned in, former senior military intelligence officer. I'm sure he's looking very pleased with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.
But what I wanted to say, Julia, was, I'm 69 now. I worked in retail all my life, and, you don't make big money in retail.
Yep.
But until I was 22, I didn't have the money to pay my monthly ticket to go to work. Mm-hmm. My parents paid for it. My parents were working class people.
Yep.
My father worked in the shipyard.
Yep.
So, and if I had been out and if I had a heavy night, my mother would have come in and hit me around the head and said, Richard, get up and go to your work.
Yeah, and how can you afford to get drunk if I'm paying for your train ticket?
Exactly. That's exactly what she would have said, Julia. But here's what annoys me. I know people that I went to school with and never worked a day in their lives. Mm-hmm. So what happens now is because there was no pension provision whenever I started. So I had a pension provision from 1984. Mm-hmm. My pension provision is £160 a month.
Yeah.
Not much.
Yeah, it's not going far.
No, it's not. And then the state pension. But there's people who I worked with, who have, I didn't work with, people who I went to school with, who have never worked a day in their lives. They get their pension provision, plus they get an extra £17.
Yeah.
Plus they get their housing benefit.
Yeah. They got more than you. Yeah, and that's what's unfair. Richard, I'll have to leave it there. I'm over time. Richard and Belfast, thank you very much. You got very grateful, Philip, there. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be talking to a former Labour Party advisor, Mike Buckley, about all of this. What are the answers? Want to hear from you as well. 0344 499 1000. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk. 10:35 is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. Philip Ingram is also with me, and we're joined right now by Mike Buckley. He's a former Labour Party advisor. Good morning to you, Mike.
Morning, how are you?
Very well indeed. Thank you very much for joining us. Well, I'm very well because I'm very lucky. I'm one of the people who've got a job. I'm not one of these young people coming out of school, coming out of an apprenticeship if they could get one, or coming out of uni and not being able to find work. We're told by Alan Milburn in this big review of NEETs, not those who are not in education, employment or training, that in 5 years' time it's going to be 1 in 6 young people who won't be, basically having anything worthwhile to do in a day. He's warning of a lost generation. The latest stats we had out today showing more than 1 million young people are out of work or training or education. What do you make of his report, and what do you think we should do to fix that?
I mean, I think, like everybody listening to this, I'm horrified at the news that's come out, although in a way it's not really news.
It's not shocking in any way, is it?
It's not, sadly. It's news that we've known before, and it's part of, clearly, like a long-term trend. I mean, numbers have been going up since 2021. The previous government obviously didn't really do anything to prevent it. This government, in fairness to it, has commissioned this report and has got this report and has committed to act on the findings. So I think things are moving in the right direction. But I can imagine if I was a young person out of work listening to this, I would think, yeah, well, things aren't being done quickly enough because I'm out of work now and something needs to be done.
Is it down to the government to find people work?
It's up to the government to create circumstances in which employers can provide work for people.
And has this government done that? I mean, lots of people are saying the national insurance rise, the minimum wage rise, the new employment rights, which sound great, people who are, might have been hard done by a nasty boss. But for the vast majority, you've got perfectly nice bosses. Actually, a lot of them are saying, can't afford to hire anybody, and I can't take the risk of hiring someone with no career, background, because I don't know if I'm going to be paying for them being off sick for the next 6 months.
I think there's a great deal of truth to that, and clearly employers are only going to hire people if they think there's going to be the income there to pay them.
Yeah.
They're only going to hire people if the tax that they pay to employ that person is in their eyes reasonable or fits with their other expenses versus their income.
Yeah.
And they're only going to do it if they feel like they're going to be able to get rid of the people that they take on if their income goes down.
Could you have a word with some of the people currently running government then? Because if you want to hire someone, OK, 21 plus, it would have, because that's when the full minimum wage. But you're 21 years old, and you're working 40-hour week, minimum wage, that you're going to get paid 26 grand, but it costs the employer, all national insurance fee, 30 grand. I'm wondering how many people who don't have any useful work experience, whether they've got a degree or not, are worth 30 grand to any employer.
I mean, it's a great question, and clearly the employer is going to employ the best person for the job. If in their eyes the best person for the job is 25 or 30 or 35, if it costs them the same or nearly as much to employ somebody under 25 or somebody just out of school, just out of university, they're not going to employ that person. And that isn't the employer doing a bad thing. That is the employer making a sensible choice for the use of their money and the viability and future of their business.
Yeah.
And nobody's at fault there. It's the system that's at fault. And if the system is at fault, then it's the government's responsibility to change it.
What about, I mean, it's very interesting. Alan Milburn is talking about, this situation arises. A lot of people are professing to be quite shocked by these stats. I mean, I'm not. We talk about this stuff all the time on the show. But barely any mention of the fact that, if you import millions and millions of people either from the EU or from the Indian subcontinent or elsewhere to come in to do jobs, what a surprise! There are fewer opportunities for young Brits. I mean, I was talking and writing about this stuff in the early 2000s. Apparently, everyone's just caught up.
Well, things have changed dramatically since the early 2000s. Clearly, there was a huge influx of people, which wasn't expected in the early 2000s.
It was expected. It was predicted by Migration Watch. They said they predicted it, and they were told that they were wrong.
Good for Migration Watch. My understanding is that the government at the time was quite taken aback at the numbers.
I know.
I mean, obviously, were we to go back into the EU, and nobody's suggesting that we will anytime soon, were we to go back into the EU, that wouldn't reoccur because the economies, say, like Poland and Hungary, that from where all those people came, or most of those people came, they've developed so much now, they would have no really interesting...
Well, a lot of Eastern Europeans are going home because there are more job opportunities at home.
Well, a lot of them have gone home, and this could segue into a conversation on the horrific impact of Brexit on our economy.
Oh,
but that's
for
not
goodness
why we're
sake.
here.
There wasn't a horrific impact of Brexit on our economy. That's why we wouldn't bother talking about it.
It's 6 to 8% of GDP.
That's a completely made-up load of nonsense. On that basis, we would have an economy that was booming more than America's, and that is pie-in-the-sky nonsense, Mike.
It's a chunk of cash. You take that up with the economists who did that report.
We've discussed it on the show. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
I don't believe that it is from the way that it is.
No, you can believe it. If you seriously think if we'd not left Brexit, not left the EU, we would have an economy that was doing as well as the American economy and not an economy doing as badly as the French or German or Italian or Spanish economies, then frankly, you're living in la-la land.
Well, I mean, you just made the point that the economies of those countries are doing rather well, which is why people wouldn't want to come here.
No. Eastern Europe. No, there are more job opportunities in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe is seeing growth. That's because they're coming from a very low level. I'm talking about comparable developed Western European countries, France, Germany, Italy, Spain.
Well, they're not doing too bad, and certainly. When you talk
to young people in those countries and find out how well they're doing.
The British economy was doing a hell of a lot better prior to 2016 than it's done since, partly because of the uncertainty, partly because we effectively put sanctions on ourselves with the trade barriers. But this is off.
We have more trade with the EU now than we used to have. Did you know that? No, of course not. Because that's not the front page of the BBC, is it? Mike, we're getting way late. It's a load of nonsense. Indeed. There is simply the biggest impacts have been lockdown and Ukraine war and government policies. Sod all, frankly, to do with the decision to have a sovereign, accountable government, which doesn't do what we want. Let's talk about what are the solutions to this, because you accept that actually some of the things that the government has done, previous governments, this government, it has actually made it harder for and less enticing for employers to employ British young people. Do we have an issue also, as my guest Philip and I have been discussing, and I know a lot of our callers are saying on the lines as well, that actually we've got a lot of people who they're not just unemployed, they're unemployable. They have, frankly, we've got all the anxiety and the depression and the unwillingness to sort of understand you have to turn up every day and turn up on time and do everything you're told and not have an attitude and et cetera, et cetera. But also just simply expectations about what the jobs they can get and not understanding, you have to start at the bottom. You need to do the menial work and you need to be told what to do. Do we have a generation of young people who frankly don't have a work ethic? Oh, have you frozen?
I'm
sorry. I'm so sorry. We missed the beginning of that. Can you start again, Mike? Sorry.
No, totally fine. I was just saying, I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but the young people that I've spoken to are people who do want a job, are educated, capable. I was speaking to one the other week who sent 300 applications and didn't even get an interview. I mean, that if anything is going to make you depressed, that is. I mean, I think to a degree, these things are self-reinforcing. You've been through school, you've been through university, you've sent 300 job applications, you've not got anywhere. That's going to make you depressed, and that may demotivate you from sending the 301st. I'm not saying that it should, but it would be understandable for any human being if that were the case. So I do think there's a problem with mental health in young people. That's partly, I'm sure, related to social media. I'm sure it's related in part to the pandemic. I'm sure it's in part related to all the news stories that are, thrown at them saying your future is going to be terrible because of climate change,
or
because
Brexit,
of worklessness, because of AI, etc. There's a lot for them. Or indeed,
but do you think it's harder for them now? Do you think life's harder for a young person now
as a society to help them?
What about young people who were basically going off to war in the Second World War? People living with rations. Do you think? I mean, is this idea that this poor generation having a terrible, terrible time with their Game Boys and their iPhones and their their Deliveroos and things like that? Are they really such a put upon generation?
No, but that isn't who they compare themselves to, though, is it? They compare themselves probably to somebody like me. So when I went to university, I got a grant to go to university. I didn't come out with any debt. I'm not repaying any student loans. And when I came out, I got a job pretty quickly. It wasn't the best job in the world, but it was fine. I worked through university. As you were saying, I learned to start at the bottom rung. I learned to clear out the bins, do what I was told, turn up on time, get paid. Then I moved up the ladder, and I've done fine. So they compare themselves to people like me who, in comparison, had it incredibly easy. So I understand why they feel hard done by.
I think they're comparing themselves to influencers living in Dubai and pop stars and football players, and I think they're going, I want all of that.
People have been given false expectations. I think that's true. But again, that's our joint responsibility as a society, isn't it? And I think the action that's taking place now hopefully on restricting social media will hopefully help with that.
Yeah, I'm not sure bans are the answer, but there we go. Can I ask you just finally? I want to ask about Andy Burnham. Tony Blair, of course, gave his sort of 5,700-word essay on the state of the nation and the state of the Labour Party. The answer isn't changing personalities or any of the other contenders, or even Keir Starmer. It's having a plan, having a policy, having a coherent idea of what you want to do. Andy Burnham has accused Blair of not understanding what's going on. He says that he was under attack on this, but he said that basically, if you don't get how inequality is driving politics now, he says if you're not rooting your analysis in the fact that people are unable to live and that things that were taken for granted are no longer affordable, then you are not understanding what's going on. He says the last 4 years have given us wide inequality. That's what's responsible for the abandonment of the centre. Who's right? Is it Blair or Burnham?
I mean, both of them are right on different things. I mean, they're very different people with very different lives. I mean, to feel the way he's standing, there are some very poor communities there. And some of them genuinely, I'm quite shocked that people live in such situations in the UK in 2026. That's a failure of government. It's also a failure of an economic model, and it makes me very angry. I'm sure it makes Andy very angry as well, which I think is why he's in politics. Tony Blair doesn't see that. Tony Blair is an international ex-statesman who hangs out with tech bros and with Donald Trump and so on. But that doesn't mean he's wrong on everything. And I think the key point that really hit me yesterday, but in fact it staggered me that we were talking about it, his point that politics needs to start with policy and assessment of what's wrong and what you want to do to fix it. You then need to win support for that. Yeah. Whoever you are, however charismatic, however boring, whatever political party, the fact that we had to have a discussion about that yesterday, the fact that that's a good idea, just completely staggered me. But it also points out something that sadly I think has been missing in our politics for quite a long time, which is an argument over ideology in the future and what a good future looks like and how we get there.
Fascinating. Really good to talk to you, Mike Buckley, former Labour Party advisor. Philip Ingram, just on that point about the bat spat between Burnham and Tony Blair. I mean, Tony Blair was taking aim at everybody, but it is interesting, as Mike Buckley says, that there's actually a conversation about whether or not you should start with policy. What's the problem? How do we solve it? What are we going to do? And then explain to people why you're doing that, as opposed to, what would be popular? What would make people like me?
Yeah, you can do stuff and achieve nothing. If you haven't got a plan that says how you're going to make things better, and you work back from that, then there's no point in doing it.
This is the military attitude, isn't it? What do you want to achieve?
What do you need to achieve, and what are your steps in doing that? And Mike turned around and just shot Andy Burnham in the foot there, because the housing issue that he described is in Andy Burnham's remit at the minute as mayor of Manchester. The problem is a local problem. It's not a central government problem.
Yeah, exactly. 10:47 time. Take a quick break. Up next, going to talk to Jamie Jenkins, his former ONS statistician, about the extraordinary stat that 4 in 10 babies born in Britain last year were born to migrant parents. We'll talk to him about that, and indeed Anna Milburn's report as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 10:50 is the time. Let's get straight to Jamie Jenkins now. He's a former statistician with the Office for National Statistics and joins us. A very good morning to you.
Morning, Julia. Lots of numbers out the last 24 hours.
Lots of numbers out. There are absolutely lots of. Can we start with, and I want to ask you about the Burnham stats on these NEETs, not in education, employment or training youngsters, but these extraordinary statistics, which I think would have been on the front page if it wasn't for this report from Anna Milburn. But births have plunged to their lowest in half a century, the latest stats for last year, while foreign-born parents account for a record 4 in 10 births. This is two extraordinary and I'm sorry, I'm going to say very worrying stats. What do you make of them?
Yeah, so the birth rate overall, so if you look at the total fertility rate, that's down to 1.39. So that means on average, women in the UK or England and Wales, these figures are covering, would have 1.39 children. And you need 2.1 to replace the adults that will go on and die at some point in the future. So we're not having fertility
that's the replacement. We're well below replacement. We're going to have a plunging population.
Well below replacement, which is why some people argue for immigration. But then the story of immigration is in these figures, as you said, because what we're finding is if you look at the fertility rate, and we didn't get these figures yesterday, but we had them a couple of years ago. If you look at the fertility rate by different nationalities, like country of birth, what you tend to find is women from Afghanistan, Iraq, Pakistan, their fertility rates are over 2. They're like nearly approaching 3 in those countries. So we're getting immigrants coming into the country, and then some of the the women from these countries then have far more children than British-born mothers are having. And you're right to point out then. So what we've seen now is that 4 in 10 of the births in the figures that we've got now are born to at least one parent who's not UK born. And people will say, well, does that matter? Well, it doesn't matter when you think that people in this country are struggling to have children because of the cost of basically bringing up children. In particular, Julia, we've talked in the past that house prices have rocketed up in the last 20, 30 years. So couples now, aren't generally living together until they're in their 30s, rather than, say, a generation ago when they'd be in their 20s. So you're losing about 10 years of when they could be having that first child.
Well, their most fertile years.
1.5 children.
Listen, I mean, there's one thing I'm evangelical about. It's about both women and men being taught from an early age. This idea that, you can start trying to have a kid at 35. Yeah, well, I did that, so I've only got one. And really, we need women to be starting to have children by 30. They can't be having massive load of debts, and neither can the men they're having kids with, because they need to be able to buy a home and settle in. Most people, when you do the stats, want more kids than they've got. They've got one, they'd like two. A lot of people have got two, would have liked three. Huge number of particularly women have no children and would have liked to have had children. That's an absolute tragedy. And a lot of that, you say, is the shortage of housing and also finding someone to settle down with you. But then, you're looking at people who've had a lot more kids. And we saw those stats on when they got lifted the 2-child benefit cap. The vast majority of those who are benefiting from that were people from Pakistan or Bangladesh who have more children. And this is an issue. I've always said, if you want to have more than 2 kids, you need to be on a country estate or a council estate, because they're the only people who can afford to have more than 2 kids in terms of, a bigger car, a bigger home, more time off work, all the costs of childcare, all of that. The average couple simply can't afford to do that anymore. But if you're on benefits, you get a bigger home, you get more money. I don't get a pay rise if I have more kids, but you do get more benefits if you have more kids.
Yeah, and that's the nonsense in this. And if we look at the countries where people are born and the numbers of births, so India's tops the list for the non-UK born mothers. Not surprising when we see mass immigration in from the likes of India, because Pakistan is number 2 on the list. We've seen mass immigration from those countries. And when you talk about the affordability, I think the other story that's been talked about was this Milburn report, Julia. So if you think about the number of people who go to university now and get raddled with huge amounts of debt, which makes it then difficult to buy a house than say would 25 years ago, because you've got this debt. They can't find jobs when they're coming out from university. So the life prospects for young people mean that having a child is one of the last things on their mind, because they think, well, I can't afford to bring a child into this world because I can't even afford to look after myself. And that is the key critical point.
Also, ladies, don't go around having babies with men who haven't got a job. Call me old-fashioned, but I don't think that's a good start in life. But we haven't talked about the cultural aspect of, the huge number of the babies being born in this country are born to people who are foreign born. Now, people will immediately say, oh, you're racist, or you're a bigot, all this, that. No. There is never, whether you agree with it or not, there is a major demographic change going on, which people were not asked about, did not consent to, and I'm pretty sure in the polling would not consent to. When people come from abroad and have their children, they are very likely to be, and particularly from certain countries where there is less integration and assimilation, language skills and the like, to bring their children up how they were brought up themselves back at home, values, interests, affiliations, language, etc., from their home country. That does not promote good sort of, should we say, community cohesion, I think is the fashionable way of saying it.
Yeah, and you're right, because what happens is we get this immigration, but they don't kind of disperse amongst the population. They go into Central Park, where all the communities are pretty much all of the same ethnic minority, and they've all come from the same nationality. So you're right, you get this increase in the number of births, disproportional to, say, the indigenous British population that we've had over the last, say, 30 or 40 years. And what that means is over the long term, Julia, and you could say it's already there, but over the long term, with these figures continuing as they are, the cultural part of Britain, it changes dramatically. And that, some people will say, well, we should embrace it. Some people will say it's a problem, but it's a fact. And it's something that needs to be discussed.
I didn't choose to go and live in India or Pakistan. If you choose to, I wouldn't expect everyone to adapt to me in those countries. And I'm sorry, I don't think you should expect people to adapt to you. Again, I don't want to embrace those cultures. Thank you very much. I want to embrace British culture. And I think that's how most people feel, and I don't think that's an unreasonable thing to say, and I think it's rather colonialist of people to think it should be any other way. Just bringing those stats all back together with that Alan Milburn report, this report basically said, was it 27 migrants are being hired for every young Brit who are being hired? These stories all massively tie together and mesh, don't they?
Yeah, and one of the things, when I worked at the ONS, you're going back, the news stories, if you go back 15, 20 years, when we had the expansion of the EU, what we tended to find then is people from kind of Romania and Poland, they were coming into the country because they were more skilled than young people, but they were willing to take lower wages. So it actually pushed the wages down. And if you're an employer, you think, I'll go over there. But that's not good for young people in the country. You know, we don't need the level of migration. The Milburn report, and I think the someone giving us the facts, we need some solutions, Julia. So what I think, if you look at Germany as one example, and Japan, much lower youth unemployment rates than what we've got in this country. Because what you've got to think about, you've got a Department for Education, we've got the Department for the Workers and Pensions, you know, we've got skills departments. Ultimately, the whole purpose of the education system is to get people to have a good start in life, to learn something. But they need to be teaching people things that will get them into work. What they're doing is just a factory to say you've got X number of GCSEs, you then go and get a couple of A levels, you then go to university, you come out with a qualification that isn't worth the paper.
No, exactly. That, by the way, half the kids are coming out without even decent GCSEs. I mean, that, you know, after you know, was it best part of 14 years of education? That's the really worrying bit. But you're right, it's not joined up thinking. I think one of the big issues at schools also is we're teaching kids it's all about their feelings as opposed to, you know, cold hard facts, which might be more useful to them. Jamie Jenkins, former ONS statistician, thank you very much indeed for that. Going to talk more about that with Philip Ingram and with you in a few moments. Lots of calls on the board. We'll get to as many as we can in the next half hour. 0344 499 1000. How do we fix it? 1 in 6 young people will not be in work or training in the next 5 years. According to this new report, we've got a warning of a lost generation. But how did this happen and how do we fix it? Because I think that people are ignoring parents in all of this. What are parents doing and what are they responsible for? Your thoughts very welcome. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. This is Talk the Home of Common Sense with me, Julia Hartley-Brewer. It's fast approaching 3 minutes past 11. And whether you're listening on DAB+ radio or on your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, great to have your company. Don't forget, if you missed anything from the show already, do go to my YouTube page, The Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe. You never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be talking more about this report from Alan Milburn. He's a long-time former Labour cabinet minister under Tony Blair, who's been very much in the news lately, but he's been social mobility czar for quite a while, and he's written this major review basically warning that 1 in 6 young people will not be in education, employment or training. They'll be NEETs within 5 years unless urgent action is taken. Now, it's not actually suggesting the solutions right now. That's going to come later in the year. But I want to know what you think the solution is. He says the government must reform welfare or condemn what he calls a lost generation of young people to a life on the dole. So what is the problem? I want to hear from you. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word TALK and your message to 87222. Get in touch on X at Talk TV. Calls to charge the national rate and text cost 1 standard network rate message. We're also going to be talking about Andy Burnham hitting back at what Tony Blair had to say about the Labour Party, including the contenders to be the next Labour Prime Minister. He says he doesn't understand what's going on after the former Prime Minister's intervention in the Labour leadership crisis. And he says he hasn't mentioned anything about inequality. If you don't understand inequality, you don't understand the problem. Plus, this is going to cheer you up on a sunny Thursday morning. Transgender taxpayers have been given lifetime access to a VIP HMRC hotline currently reserved for MPs and members of the royal family to deal with their tax queries, so they can basically get through pretty much immediately if they've got a query, because apparently if you changed your gender you need a lifetime anonymity, no one accessing your information. I mean, generally, I keep being told trans people want equality, already have equality. These trans activists who push for this stuff, they want to be special, don't they? Frankly, I don't see why the royal family or MP should get priority access either, but there we are. I'd love to hear your thoughts on all the stories we're talking about. Plenty more to come. Philip Ingram, I'm delighted to say, joins me, as he always does, on a Thursday morning, former senior military intelligence officer. We've done a little bit of the old sort of like, in my day, today, we've done a bit, in my day, I got up, click, roll, click, whip, tongue.
3 o'clock in the morning.
I got up half an hour before I went to work. We have been the Four Yorkshiremen, that famous Monty Python sketch, which, by the way, I saw them do live back at the O2 Centre. When they did that tour. Genuinely, they were laughing so much when they were doing that sketch. They couldn't carry it. And do you know what? The entire audience knew it off by heart, and we just did it for them, which was a wonderful, wonderful moment. But this is the thing. I think I digress. I'm thinking this morning, and I see this report from Alan Milburn, and I read a lot of it last night. We got it under embargo, and he's basically saying, look, we've got a crisis, we've got a problem, we've got, it's getting worse. It's already, we've got 1.1 million unemployed youngsters right now, between 16 and 24. They're not doing anything, they're not working, they're not training, not in an apprenticeship, they're not at university, they're just doing nothing all day. This is not good. It's not good for the economy. It's not good for them. It's not good for our future. All bad news. Needs to be dealt with. It's a personal, national, economic, social, everything tragedy. It really is. What do we do about it? Now, I think you need to diagnose the problem before you can give the remedy, give the solution. And Alan Milburn goes into a lot of detail. And lots of what he's saying in this report is, look, these young people are being failed. They're a lost generation. AI hasn't quite hit this generation yet in terms of the jobs, but it's going to big time. But, they're being failed by schools. They're being failed by the government. We've got an issue where it's too easy to be on benefits, too easy to sort of have a mental health problem, supposedly anxiety, ADHD, and basically be written off for life on the pile of doing nothing for the rest of your life. But I mean, and he talks a lot about that. And look, doesn't touch so much on the fact that actually he was part of a government that brought in millions of people from abroad who would be hired for cheaper rates than young people would with more experience and skills and probably a better attitude. But also, he does mention the words family and parents and things in his report, but I've gone through it, and the only mentions basically about if you come from a poor background or you are into you live in a poor area where life is very, very hard, and you haven't got parents who can offer advice, or you have parents who are out of work, or you've been a carer, and all of those things, and those are all relevant. But the one thing I can't see anywhere in there, and correct me if I'm wrong, and that report, by the way, has just been published in the last few moments. There's a small press conference right now where he's going to be speaking, is that they don't talk about parental guidance and the lessons you learn from your parents. Because fundamentally, to me, your attitude to work, your expectations of work and what you should do, how you behave, your work ethic, your punctuality, your ability to do what you're told to do and not have an attitude about it, to turn up whether it's raining or hot or you've got sniffles, etc., etc. That is fundamentally, that's parents. That's got soddle to do with the government. It's got soddle to do with the schools. I mean, we're asking them to take on a lot of parenting roles, but isn't that down to mum and dad?
It is, but you've got a lot of mum and dads now who've never worked, and they haven't got out, so they don't know that. They're not getting that from society.
Don't care.
And they don't care. If you've got this generation where it's easier for the kids to be upstairs with their Xbox or their Game Boy or something else, rather than going out and interacting with other kids, because the parents find it easier, it's quieter than in there, then yes, the parents are getting it wrong, but many of the parents just don't understand this. And this is where we need our education system then to start to prepare kids, not just for
Can't we just
getting
insist that parents do? Wouldn't parents be more willing to do it if the kids became their financial problem?
But if the parents don't know, if they don't have that foundation themselves,
if you've never gone out to work,
exactly, there's nothing they can do. So schools have to pick that up. And again, the youngsters themselves need to get a rocket up their proverbial, because it's down to them as well. And if we look at, we've heard Germany quoted. Germany had national service for many years, and those that are parents now will have done that. That's not just in the military, but that's also out into civilian national service, fire service, ambulance, going and providing care and all the rest of it. So there is a work ethic amongst the group of people who are parents now.
An expectation.
And that work ethic goes through many places in the continent. We don't have that work ethic. We need to get that in. But we need to get preparation in our education system as well.
It's got to be very... But again, I genuinely think the parents who think that school's optional on a Monday morning...
no.
I mean, if you teach your kids that... And the number of kids, the huge percentage of children who just don't go to school for sort of a week a term. I think my daughter probably had a week off her entire school career. I don't care if you've got I mean, the other time she was off COVID, she was literally not allowed in school because she had COVID. But when I was doing the breakfast show, you can't call in sick at 4 in the morning. Who the hell are they going to get to do the job? It is just, that's just not, it's not an option. And I think a lot of parents see school as an option, work as an option, making excuses. I think a lot of teachers play along with this as well, like, oh, you're anxious or you're worried. This whole everyone must have prizes thing on sports day. Can't have winners and losers. Well, yeah, life is full of those people. Exactly. By the way, in a lot of areas of life, there are more people who win than lose. And teaching that resilience that, no one's replied to any of your job applications. Now, I'm sorry about that, but you're going to push on and you're going to get on with it. Look, I've got a teenage daughter who's, sharp, sharpest penny you could find, and great work ethic. There's no job she thinks too beneath her. Washing up, making poached eggs, working night shifts on a nightclub bar, getting home at 6:30 in the morning. Got no issue. I'm very proud of her. But it's, she sends off loads of applications and doesn't hear anything back. And I think that's rude from the employers. But I imagine if you're getting 2,000 applications for some sort of job. That said, as you were saying earlier, the amount of times I walk through my local high street, I walk through the centre of town in London, now I go, it's different if you live in a Welsh mining village. I get that. Life is different in different parts of the country. But there are kids in London saying they can't find a job. Just walk down the high street. There are literally cards in every window saying staff wanted. You talk of Welsh mining villages. I was driving through Wales last weekend and going through a lot of the villages, and they were and small towns and advertising for staff. There's lots of adverts around out there, and it's if someone has put 300 job applications in and hasn't had a response, I would say that they're getting their application process wrong, and they're getting their applications wrong. Or they're going for the jobs which they're just not. But you keep repeating the same thing. It's like running against the same brick wall and doing the same thing all the time and hoping that you're going to get through the brick wall. Whenever I hear of somebody like they can't get a job, they're sending applications, I always just think, can I meet up with you? Give me 5 minutes with you. Walk into the room and talk to me as if I was giving you a job. Show me your CV. I reckon I could probably improve your chances by about 400% with 5 minutes with you. Oh, easy. I've had work experience people, genuinely, turn up when they feel like it. I believe we said 9 o'clock. For the work experience, we said 9 o'clock. And no, it's 9:15. It's 9:15. It's not 9 o'clock. So you're late. Now, my view is, you get one warning.
Yes,
nothing.
That's it.
Can't be. You know. I mean, have you ever known me not to turn up for my job on time?
3 strikes and you're out.
I just find it. Well, I think for a lot of people, it's like that's not fair. There's that, but also, the bus was late. We should have got an earlier bus then.
Yeah.
Again, it's all about the attitude. But I think that comes from parents, the expectation, and also, you know what? You don't get to update. You have to do as you're told.
Yeah.
A lot of parents now, the kids get told off by the teachers, and they go in and berate the teachers.
Yeah.
I know employers where the parent has called up on behalf of the child. I mean, they're unable to make the phone call to me themselves. My husband runs an IT business. They've had people not turning up for the job interview, calling in half an hour and it's after it's supposed to start, saying, I'm running late. Can I stop? Well, no. Okay, but we'll put it in another day.
Yep.
They've literally said, we'll do it again on Monday. And they've turned up late on the Monday. And my husband's gone, thank you very much. We won't be needing you. And they've gone, but this is so unfair. I've travelled this way. No, we gave you a second chance and you blew it. I mean, if you don't turn up to the interview on time twice, what are the odds you're going to turn up to work on time? We need people who turn up on time. And their argument is not, oh my God, I've completely messed up. They're like, and they're going home saying, this is so unfair.
Yeah.
Now, life is unfair, but I find, and this is, maybe it's just me, it's amazing how much, and some people could be lucky or unlucky. It's amazing how much luck people who work hard have. It's just incredible how much luck comes their way. And I think you can be born into a family where it's not your fault your parents didn't have a job and you live somewhere where there aren't many opportunities and you've not been taught these skills and you've got a rubbish school and you shouldn't be failed like that. But at some point, you're on the planet for, 70, 80 years, 90 years if you're lucky. This is it. You can't just go, well, I'm just going to sit on my Game Boy. I'm just going to sit doing, pretend I'm an influencer, doing stupid, puckered fake lips in my phone all day if I'm a girl. That's not a life. But again, it comes back to parents.
Well, it comes back to parents, but it comes back to preppers in society, because your parents, if they have not gone through that themselves and do not have the reference point, can't do it. Our schools are not preparing children to go out into real life. Our universities are not preparing students to go out into real life, because I've sat down and mentored students going out, and the standard of their CVs and their understanding of the reality of the workplace is shockingly
bad. And they don't
know
anything. If you do an arts degree now at most universities, you're not getting up before noon.
Yeah, well,
how is that preparing you for life?
These were all accountants, business students, and
so the together ones,
law students. So the together ones, and they were had an appalling start to what's going on, and many of them were more mature students, so actually had families or had gone out and done a little bit of work.
And they still didn't get
it. But even then, they were still a lot of them were still just not getting the basics right, and were feeling entitled. And that is a failure in our education system the whole way through to prepare people. And yes, you can.
Well, how to do a job interview, how to write the CV, how to.
That's as important as getting the degree. At the end of the day, it's preparing you for outside in life.
I'm sorry. I think attitude.
Yeah,
I think attitude. I think what can I do? What can I do to please you? Is your attitude?
I've been an employer as well, running a small business, and getting people in with attitudes. And I inherited some people who had very interesting attitudes, and they felt they were more entitled to anyone else and spent more work time complaining about heights of desks or screens not being there. Or
every office has got those. Every office has got at least one person who is 80% of HR's time, and that's another thing. You talked earlier in the show again about the cost of hiring somebody. If you're basically the same price, fortune to hire somebody who's got no work experience. Why wouldn't you hire someone who's from Slovakia or Poland
who's got work
experience, who's got proven track record and references, and also the jobs, the new employment rights, harder to get rid of people, sick leave from day one.
They make it impossible. I know a number of employers who are actively removing vacancies because they cannot handle the new employment regulations and the additional costs that have come in for employing people.
Yeah, and also just the constant complaining about, my rights is my rights that. No. And again, I'm not talking about people putting up with being, discriminated against in the workplace, but seeing everything as some sort of slight as opposed to. No, I just need you. Genuinely, in lots of offices now, I've got friends in lots of different fields, so, you're not even allowed to sort of say to someone, look, I'm going to need you to buck up your ideas. I need you to work faster. I need you to work harder. I need a better attitude. That will get you in HR with a complaint. as opposed to the employee go, gosh, I'm sorry, I need to up my game.
Then HR need to start to work on behalf of the companies and get a bit of backbone instead of trying to do as
well, then you're racist or transphobic.
The trouble is this comes from the top, and it starts with the government setting all these silly rules, and we need to get back to good old basics again.
Yeah, well, again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I mean, again, when I came in, I thought, oh God, I'm just being, old Yorkshireman sort of thing in that attitude. But I was really interested to see actually all the young people in the office and using, in their 20s, all going, we think exactly the same. I mean, that's very telling. And again, all of them talked about they got the work ethic from their parents.
Yeah. And 100%, and or they got work ethics from their friends and all the rest. It's the social groups that are in.
Yeah.
It's the society.
Expectations.
And a lot of the people that I work with, because I'm working with about 3 or 4 different teams in the building, and there's people in their early 20s. They're in an apprenticeships. They've done a degree and they then come in an apprenticeship, and they can see the opportunities. And they've got that get up and go.
I'm amazed again. It's a number of young people I've met who come. Well, I've got a degree, and it's like, okay, where's your degree from? With all due respect, you've got a 2-2 in a nothing degree from a second-rate university that is basically not worth the piece of paper it's printed on. And they told me, well, I don't see why I should go and work in a coffee bar or do this or in a shop because I'm overqualified. And I'm like, I had like 3 grade A levels and a degree from Oxford, and I went and did those jobs, and I never thought those jobs were beneath me because they weren't. Because those jobs aren't beneath anyone.
And you learn more in the workplace about people and about society and everything else.
I've learned more from waitressing and bar work and dealing with difficult customers at midnight on a Friday night in a burger takeaway than I've learned in any other job. Are
they still in A&E?
They are still in A&E. I think you'll find, sir, that was your order, because I'm the only person in this conversation who's not blind drunk. But there we are. Customer's always right, as we always had on the side. Let's also talk about these areas where 80% of children are born to foreign-born parents. The birth rate's fallen to a record low. 4 out of 10 births last year were to migrant parents. I mean, India, Pakistan topping those. You've got a huge number of immigrants from those areas. For young people, they're more likely to be having babies. Huge number, not Indian so much, but actually certainly Pakistanis, Afghanistan as well on the list. Much more likely to be on benefits, much lower employment rate. I mean, those are just the stats. But there are some areas where 80% of children are being born to foreign parents. Now, people can say, "Well, what difference does that make? What do you care?" I think when the most common name on birth certificates is no longer John and is Mohammed. I think that's a conversation we need to have. I think that is a change in our demographics, a change in the makeup of our country that is something we should be able to discuss, be allowed to discuss, and people shouldn't just shout, oh, bigger, bigger, bigger. I think bringing in, say we brought in a whole load of, Americans, Australians, Canadians, New Zealanders, or even French or Italians, I might think, like, do you know what, it probably isn't a big difference in terms of things. When you're bringing in people from cultures vastly different to ours, different languages, different perhaps educational standards, and certainly from some of these countries, different cultural norms and expectations and attitudes towards things like women, girls' education, things like that. I think you are creating a major change in our society, which I don't remember anyone asking us whether we should do it or not. And I'm pretty darn sure when we did become aware of this, we all said no en masse again and again. No government in this country since 2010 onwards has been elected on anything other than a promise to cut migration. And this is what we're living with the consequences. And even if we did see, say, a reform government in the next election, and we did see a mass cut off from the number of people coming to this country, even if we saw mass deportations of people or benefits being cut for people who are already here, and therefore life being less pleasant and people leaving. I think we are looking at a absolutely huge apocalyptic level of civilizational, generational, demographic change in this country, which we didn't ask for and didn't agree to.
It is, exactly. And this comes a lot from different cultures coming into this country with different cultural norms. There's cultural norms where people from certain countries, certain backgrounds and all the rest of it will not have 2.2 children. They'll have 5, 6, 7, 8 children, and we have that in that country. And I come from Northern Ireland. It was very clear, as I was growing up, that if you were from a a Protestant family, it tended to be the average of 2.2 children. Yeah. If you were from a Roman Catholic family, because of the Church's views on contraception, people were having 5, 6, 7 children, and that was a norm. And that turned into politics, where one side said, we're going to outbreed you, and therefore by that year
I think Ireland will be reunited based on that.
But that's changed, and the attitude's changed, and therefore those old fuddy-duddies who are still saying that that's going to go in, it's not going to happen. The big difference is that cultures are being imported, and now one of the more common names is in Ireland is Mohammed, and we're finding that in this country where people aren't being integrated, and as you say, it's enabling people to stay in their own little cultural bubbles, not learn to speak English, and this is where any government that comes in needs to turn around and review people's whatever status they are in staying here, their visas to stay, and there should be a contribution to society score. And
absolutely.
If you don't contribute to society, you're not allowed to stay.
And I've no understanding at all why people who are not British citizens should be entitled to any benefits. I find this utterly perplexing. The idea that I would go to France or India or America and to say, hello, I'd like to live here, and I'd like you to pay my way and provide my housing. I mean, that sounds absurd. So why is it not absurd for this country?
Yeah, exactly. And this is where we've got the government coming in again and removing the 2-child benefit cap. So all that's going to do is encourage even more. There should be a limit on those that are not British citizens who have not contributed taxes to a certain level on how much, whether they are allowed to give birth for free in the NHS. Sorry, charge people. If you want to have 5, 6, 7 kids, charge them.
I don't think anybody should be allowed in this country who's not British who hasn't got private health insurance.
Correct.
I'm genuine. I think tourists, no, you go to a lot of countries, you need to be able to prove that you've got private health insurance.
And across Europe as well, you have to do that in many countries. It's completely the norm, and we should be starting to do that.
And if you, by the way, if you can't, and we're not talking about people spending thousands. If you're on a 2-week trip, you're looking at sort of like 20 quid or something. But if you haven't got, it's too much. If you haven't got that 20 quid,
then don't come.
Well,
because you're not going to spend it here.
Yeah, you're not much use to me. You're not spending money on hotels and restaurants and West End shows at this point, are you? It's very interesting. Andy Burnham, of course, standing in this Makerfield by-election, wants to be the next Prime Minister if he gets that. He's done another policy. Apparently this is his third U-turn since he's come as a candidate. He no longer believes that migrants should be given immediate access to the benefits system. He's consistently campaigned against this long-standing government policy to bar migrants from accessing the welfare state until they obtain permanent residence. He had a news announcement from 2019 on his mayoral website setting out his policy to tackle homelessness, and included a call to abolish the no recourse to public funds policy for migrants. And that policy has been in place since 1999 and basically bars migrants on work, study and family visas from getting public funds like housing support, universal credit, disability benefit. But those on those visas. But if it's lifted only once a foreign citizen has obtained indefinite leave to remain, so they can stay here, then of course they do get to claim benefits. But of course we know that millions are doing that. I mean, in the last year alone, 600,000 have claimed indefinite leave to remain or applying to become a British citizen. So they want to bypass the attempt to restrict these things, because you only have to be here 5 years. You don't even have to speak fluent English. I mean, and it is quite extraordinary that these people, and you could be a dependent, and what use are you to us? But it's fascinating. But this is his latest U-turn. Oh no, they're saying no, 5th U-turn since he was chosen as Labour's candidate. I mean, just in terms of immigration and numerous other things. I mean, this is. But he's quite telling, isn't it?
But he's trying to prove that he's as good as Keir Starmer, if not better. He's U-turning faster. But again, it comes down to the fact that if you look, this is a measure of him as a politician. What he's been clearly putting out as Mayor of Manchester are what are popular sound bites that he thinks locals are going to sign up to, and he's suddenly gone, oh no, I need to lift that up to a national bit. Those popular sound bites have to be different, and he's changing them completely. No substance, no planning. Nothing. And that's really, really worrying.
Now, because I mentioned the Makerfield by-election, I do have to read out the full list of candidates.
Excellent.
Put the kettle on, I'll be back in a moment. Have to do this. Jake Austin, Liberal Democrats, Count Binface Party, Andy Burnham, the Labour Party, Dan Clark, the Libertarian Party, John Dyer, Independent, Ed Gemmell, Climate Party, Paul Gould, Independent, Alan Howlin, Lord Hope, the official monster raving loony party, Robert Kenyon, Reform UK, Robert Pownell, Protect the Wild, Rebecca Shepherd, Restore Britain, Sarah Wakefield, Green Party, Peter Ward, Rejoin EU, Michael Winstanley, the Conservative Party. There you go. Let's take a quick break and then we're going to be back with your calls. 0344 499 1000, lots of them piling up on the board there. How do we fix this problem with the NEETs? A lost generation. 1 in 6 will, in the next few years, be unemployed, out of training, out of education, and frankly, just doing nothing of any use to them or the country. How do we fix it? What's the real problem? Tell us what you think. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 11:29 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls. 0344 499 1000 is the number that Mike in Lancashire has called. And Mike, you, like everyone on the board, wants to talk about these NEETs, not in education, employment or training. 1 in 6 very soon are going to be in that state of play. What's the problem and how do we fix it?
Morning, Julia. Morning, Philip. I've not spoken to you for a long while, Julia.
Well, about time you called then.
I have. I speak to everybody, but I've not spoken to you for a while.
Cheeky.
Julia, I am 68 years of age, and I suffer with bipolar. Mm-hmm. All my life, I have worked and worked and worked. I have had jobs that people could only dream of. I worked for an international film star.
Get you?
I had a job when I was 14 and a butcher's lad at 14, and I used to earn £1 a day.
Yeah.
I got through it. I came from a single family. My mother helped me. We got all the way through it and stuff.
Yeah.
You can do it. Yeah. If you want to do it, you can do it, Julia.
So why do you think that someone now who's bipolar or ADHD or autism, I mean, very different things, or has depression, anxiety, whatever it is, who whether from 2 parents or a single parent, whether growing up with money or not, why do you think they can't? What's the difference?
I think it's just these days they're just... Nobody wants to sort of, the parentage and stuff. It's just pushed off to mental health services. In my day, Julia, they didn't really have mental health services. You got on with it with the help of your family. And if your parent and your family aren't helping you, which these days a lot of parents, they don't. They just dump the kids on, can't be bothered, to mental health services and...
Or I worry they're either not helping, not involved at all, and they're just on their gadgets and they don't care, or they're just soft-soaping and they're just sort of going, oh, poor you. I do worry that there isn't enough. I'm sorry you feel that way, but nevertheless, you need to go to school.
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, sometimes, I didn't want to go to school, but, I live with my mum and my sister. Sometimes I didn't want to go to school. She dragged me there. Yeah.
You laugh about it, but that was... That was a good job your mum did.
Yeah. And my grandparents, because when my mum went to work, my mum used to have 2 jobs. Yeah. She never claimed benefits. She had 2 jobs. There you go. To bring me and my sister up, and my grandparents, helping my grandparents. They were the same. My grandmother. I loved her. I mean, I loved the bones of her, but she was strict. You get up to school, you're going to do that. But also, Julie, in school, you know, we had people, you know, the careers officer. I don't know if they do that in schools anymore.
They do.
Oh, right. Well, they got me into my first job. I worked for a big industrial when I was 16. Yeah. Well, it was Unilever I worked for.
Can I just say, you're the first person I've ever met who the careers officer actually got them a job. Everyone else says they're no use at all. Mike, that's fantastic. I'm glad life's worked out for you. Again, I think it keeps coming back to family. Appreciate that call. Paul's in Wolverhampton. Hello, Paul. What do you want to say?
Hello there. Good morning.
Hello. Good morning.
Right, yeah. Good morning. I manage a butcher's shop. And to get young people come out and do some work, it's more or less impossible. We interviewed so many young lads over the last 6 months even.
Yep.
Offered them the job. Yeah, they come smart shirt and tie. Tell them the wage. We're going to pay them £13 an hour, which is above minimum age. Yep. 18, 19 years old. Give them an attendance bonus as well if they get here on time. An extra £30 a week.
You get a bonus for turning up on time. Good grief. Okay.
Yeah.
Already apoplectic.
They turn up on time, then, yeah, they get £30 a week. We interviewed one lad, gave him the job. He found us within an hour of getting back home, said, my parents said it's not enough money a week. And both his parents were claiming benefits.
Of course they were.
Then we took this lad on, and he was brought up by his grandparents, and he was like a breath of fresh air. Absolutely amazing lad. He's still here now. He's working hard. He's really committed to the job. Yep. And I think a lot of it is just down to the parenting of these kids.
When you offer jobs, do they always turn up? I mean, even if you've offered the job, but you said a kid you just called and said he wasn't turning up. At least he called. Do they always turn up?
They never show. No, they never show. They never show.
So you can offer, because I know the people who're hiring people. They literally they take the job and then just never turn up.
That's right, and it's so wrong. And like we gave this one lad this job. Brilliant. A really nice guy came into the shop. He came in with his dad. And I thought, yeah, great, he's going to be good for the shop, good for the trade. He just never showed up at all.
Just extraordinary. I get it, because you hear about these young people saying, I've sent 300 job applications, no one's even replied to me. And you think, yeah, but often we see it the other side. What do you, as an employer, you've had the good ones, you had the wrong ones, what do you think the problem is and how do we fix it?
I think the problem is the parenting. I really do.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I listened to one of your callers earlier saying about they drinking like soft drinks, filling themselves up with sugar, Mars bars, you know, all that sort of malarkey. These PlayStation games are there till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. It's just no way to live.
Yeah, and again, and this is from a young age, and again, the parents go, it's about times I hear parents go, well, what can you do? I don't know, your job? That would be a good start.
To me when I was growing up.
I know.
My parents were strict, and it's paid off.
Yeah, I know. And again, but you use this word strict. No, they were good parents. That's why they were just good parents. They were good parents. They did their job. Because it's a job. Parenting is a job. It's not, it's not all wrapping in cotton wool. It's doing a job. It's turning out a good, moral, working, contributing member of society. That is your job.
That's right, and parenting isn't a 9 till 5 job, it's 24/7.
Absolutely. Paul, thank you so much. Fantastic call. Big butcher's theme this morning, but I didn't see that one coming. Philip, that echoes a lot of what we've been saying. It's not just us old fuddy-duddies.
Oh, very much so. And, as you said, mothers, grandparents, and it's good old-fashioned values, and it's getting those old-fashioned values back in again at every level.
Not old-fashioned, they're just literally the ones that make society function.
Yeah, but we've lost them in families, we've lost them in communities, we've lost them in school, and we've lost them in government policy. That's why the country is going to pot.
Yep, there we go. 11:36 is the time. Well, I'll get the thoughts of you don't all boo at once. We've got a senior figure from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. Not Tony Blair, sadly, but he'll be a very good replacement of Ryan Wayne. He's done a lot of work on youth unemployment, and he's going to be here to talk about what he makes of that Alan Melbourne report. Up next, this is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
This is Talk. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. 11:38 is the time. Let's go straight to Ryan Wayne. He's a Senior Director for Policy and Politics at the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change and joins us to talk about, well, all these big stories in the news. Very good morning to you, Ryan.
Good morning, Julia. Great to be on.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. Well, you know, your boss very much in the news this week with his big 5,700-word essay. I'd love to come to that in just a few moments, but because Andy Burnham's hit back at him saying he doesn't understand what's going on. But big story today is Alan Milburn, and we've got a box on the side of the screen for those who are watching on YouTube, where Alan Milburn is giving a press conference right now. And this report it was actually technically embargoed until just about 40 minutes ago, looking at NEETs, those young people not in education, employment or training, and we've got over 1 million of them right now, and he says within the next 5 years it's going to be 1 in 6 youngsters aged 16 to 24 are not going to be basically doing anything useful with their lives. What do you think the problem is? Because you've done a lot of investigation into this as well, haven't you?
Yeah, well, I can see Alan on screen now with his Tony Blair-esque hand gestures, and I've no doubt that he'll be saying exactly the right things, which is we have a real problem in this country when it comes to youth unemployment. It's a national travesty. And I actually think you can read Alan's contribution today with Tony's essay yesterday, which is we need to rebuild our economy and end the waste of a generation. And when it comes to this particular issue of young people, which I think is a national travesty, there's two parts of it for me, very simply. We need to create the opportunities and the jobs for young people to go into. And we need to ready and prepare those young people so that they can do those jobs. And I was listening to your callers before who thought were excellent, talking about the jobs that they've created and offered. And it's very clear that the young people they're speaking to just aren't ready for work. So that Alan and others are right to ask the question of why. And there are some big challenges there, but I also think this is a huge opportunity for us to go and solve this massive problem.
Well, I don't think we've got a choice because, I mean, our country's going down in a handcart if we don't. But, I mean, you talk about an opportunity. OK, so what do we need to do?
I think we need to really rethink about the cost of creating opportunity and the risk involved. Again, I'm really taken by your callers, actually. When you're creating a job, you are taking a risk.
Yeah.
And it is very clear that over the last decade, it's become much more difficult for a small business and a big business, actually, to take a risk. It's become more expensive to hire someone. So we need to lower the cost there. I also think there's a role for government to play. When you look at how the world is changing, there are these big transformations taking place, and we're in the throes of them now. There's the AI revolution, which is going to take away jobs, but it's also going to create jobs if we harness it. And also, it will not have escaped you and your listeners that we are in an age of global geo-insecurity. We are essentially at war. The reasons why we're calling for increased defence spending, for example, is precisely because of that. But increased defence spending, that can also create opportunity, jobs, really high-quality jobs. So we've got to think about that as well.
I mean, that all sounds well and good, and I do agree with that. But there's quite a lot of evidence that, I mean, these youngsters, they're not really being hit by the AI revolution just yet. I mean, my God, the next couple of years they will be. But, you know, what about, you know, the opportunities that have been taken away? For instance, you know, all the industry that's left the country because of high energy prices, largely down to net zero policies. Well, Climate Change Act, Tony Blair, you know. What about sending a load of young people to university? 50% of young people, 50%, which was a Tony Blair policy. I mean, 50% of young people can't even get 5 half-decent grade GCSEs, including English and maths. So why on earth he thinks 50% of people are capable of going to university and get anything out of it, other than 60 grand now worth of debt? I find utterly bizarre. And then thinking, of course, I've got this degree, I've got all this debt, I need a decent job. And then, of course, actually, they're having to take non-graduate jobs. What about importing most of Eastern Europe to the country during his years in office, which basically had Poles and Slovaks and Romanians and Czechs and everyone competing with young people for jobs and willing to work for lower wages, long before minimum wage, of course. I mean, you know, there are lots of things that Tony Blair, the head of your institute, did and still to this day, as far as I can tell, supports, which have absolutely slammed the chances of young Brits.
Yeah, look, you've set out a lot there, and I think that just shows how wholesale this issue is. It's immigration policy, it's business policy, it's education policy. Let me just take a couple of those in turn. You're right to talk about energy prices, and that has a direct impact on the cost for business. We have the most expensive energy prices in the world. We need to get rid of this objective of trying to get as much clean energy by 2030 as possible.
Amen to that.
The cost. And we need instead to pursue a goal of cheaper energy. That's just one thing that we need to do.
Can I point out that Tony Blair, until 10 minutes ago, before it was fashionable, was supporting net zero?
Look, he still supports net zero. It's not a question.
It's either net zero or affordable energy. You can only have one.
But the question is the timing.
No, it's not. No, that's nonsense.
No. Julia, I think this is a really important point. There's no point in racing at speed in a marathon. Like, climate change is real, but the question is how fast do you need to get to those changes? But you're right to pick a whole host of different issues. Take immigration policy. Under New Labour, yes, there was an influx of people from the European Union, but that was skilled labour that was coming in to build our houses and our home. It was growing the economy. And that's where I come back to. The big challenge we've got is how do we return back to growth? And the answers in 2026 will be very different.
But Ryan, you're saying this, and this was the argument, it was going to grow the economy. We didn't see much growth, actually. That's a load of nonsense. But also, you get growth both per capita. No, we really didn't, because we had more people who were showing out. But also, you brought in these people who were skilled to build our houses. But that as a result of that, no one bothered training up our young people to build their houses, to do those jobs. And that has left a legacy. I mean, this didn't just happen out of nowhere. Young people were competing with people 10 years, 20 years older than them, with loads of experience, with probably better work attitudes, are willing to work for lower wages. What a surprise the employers chose the Eastern Europeans.
You're talking to someone who grew up in that era, a Brit, born and bred in Liverpool. I worked in Sainsbury's from the age of 16 to 21. The best training I got, that opportunity was available for me. The economy was growing. It was easier for Sainsbury's to create opportunities that people like me could step into. I'm not disputing some of the points you make about young people's readiness, but I think that has got worse. And there's another additional issue which we need to work on here, which is the welfare system itself. And the proliferation of mental health diagnoses. Now, I don't want to dispute whether someone has anxiety or ADHD or not, but what I would say is that we've seen a proliferation in diagnoses around that, which has then led to people going onto the benefits bill. We need to give better support for people with those conditions that is not giving them cash to stay out of work, but instead supporting them in work. What we're talking about is whole systems reform.
And that's the problem. And again, I mean, I am disputing whether these people, a lot of them have this issue. There are definitely people who've got it. But the fact that we've got diagnoses completely out of kilter with any other Western country, often with healthcare services that are more capable of doing those diagnoses, that tells you that a lot of these people simply don't have the problems that they're
there's a really interesting point there, because that's what I thought. I thought we must be out of kilter with other countries. We're not. We are in keeping with comparable countries with people getting diagnosed. Where we're out of kilter is with those people then who have those diagnoses going onto the benefits bill. So there's a real problem there. You've got to understand the exact specific problem and start to address it, which is why we need short-term action as well as the longer-term action that I'm setting out today.
Just finally, I want to ask you, because Tony Blair, basically said the problem is with the Labour Party, it's not personalities. He said in his essay yesterday, it's not communication. It's about the policies, and whoever is leader of the party, you need to have the right, identify the problems and have the policies that will actually, and then explain them to people why they work. Andy Burnham has said, look, he didn't really talk about inequality. He said, if you don't get how inequality is driving politics now, if you're not rooting your analysis in the fact that people are unable to live and that things that were taken for granted are no longer affordable, then you are not understanding what's going on. Is he right?
I think he's right in the sense that people are struggling, and we're in the midst of this cost of living crisis that seems never ending. But the reason why we're there is because Britain has not had a pay rise for over a decade now, and yet the cost of goods has gone up and up and up. The reason for that is because of poor economic growth. And so the answer to Andy's challenge around inequality, which is one that I share and really do believe in, is that we need to grow the economy. You do not address inequality by managing decline. You address inequality by growing the economy.
Okay, really good to talk to you. Thank you very much. That's Ryan Wayne. He's from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. If you could tell your boss Tony, tell Tony, could he pop on the show anytime? It would be good to get him on. Thank you very much indeed. I once hitched a lift on Tony Blair's plane on the way back from a summit in Milan. Just me. Got an interview with him. Yeah, as you do. Hitched a lift on the Prime Minister's plane. Philip, what do you make of what Ryan had to say?
Well, I think he talked a lot of sense. And growing the economy is the only way to get out of this. But we've got a series of policies at the moment that are coming through that are making it more difficult for employers to employ people. We've got a series of policies that are making it more difficult for us to create tax opportunities from exploiting natural resources that we have under the North Sea. We've got a series of policies that are politically driven in the timelines that they come in. With Ed Milliwatt and his green policies and everything else, if they are really going to make a difference, do them whenever we can economically afford it. Don't do it. No,
not going to make a
but
difference.
They're not going to make a difference.
Unnecessary,
so, exactly.
But
you park it for something in the future, like they do with everything else.
Park it for 100 years, and at some point we'll have at some point there'll be some better energy option, and we'll do that one. 11:49 is time. We're going to take a quick break. Next, we're going to talk about a really, really, really important story, because I do think if you're ever trying to get through to HMRC and you're not, I don't know, Angela Rayner or a royal prince or princess, you may find that you are waiting for a very, very long time on the phone. You might write an email where you may not even get a response to your email, but don't worry. You could just identify as trans, because then you get your own VIP hotline. I absolutely kid you not. We're going to talk about that up next. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good morning. Welcome back to the show. 11:52 is the time. Let's talk about whether or not you can actually get through to HMRC. Got a tax query? Worried about something? Should you claim something? Should you not? What do you owe? You give HMRC a call, don't you? Call the taxman. Yeah, you're lucky if you get the phone answered at all, or if when it is answered, the phone just immediately goes down and you try emailing. Very unlikely to get a response. One of the biggest banes of complaint from people, particularly in January ahead of the tax deadline. But don't worry, if you're an MP or you're a royal, you've got a VIP hotline. It's called Public Department 1, PD1. You can get through often, on the second ring, but certainly within a couple of minutes. And guess who's been added to that list? I kid you not, as discovered by a Telegraph reporter just looking into who was eligible for this basically, fast-track system, which clearly the likes of Angela Rayner got to use when she had her tax queries over her stamp duty, includes trans-identified taxpayers. Well, let's talk about this with the author of Transsexual Apostate, My Journey Back to Reality, trans-identified man, Debbie Hayton, who joins us. A very good morning to you, Debbie.
Good morning, Julia.
Thank you for joining us. I don't think it's reasonable. I don't accept it, but I can see an argument for why royal family or MPs would have someone a hotline to deal with things, because there might be public scrutiny of their personal tax affairs. I don't think it's justified for anyone. I think a lot of people could claim the same thing. But why on earth would someone, because they identify as trans, be eligible to use the hotline?
Well, this was put in 20 years ago, at a time which was very different, when trans people were hounded from their jobs and sacked for being trans. And it was felt that trans people needed the same level of confidentiality that, say, somebody in witness protection has. So that's why their tax records could be put in Public Department 1. But to be honest, it's more of a hassle than a help. It's not something I've ever bothered with.
I was going to say, you've not used it.
Oh, no. It stops you being able to use all the online services. So, for example, when most of my tax affairs are done online, I'll file my taxes online. I'll do my tax return online. If I want to check my state pension forecast, I'll do that online. Whereas once you get taken into this confidentiality,
then you can't do it.
You can't do any of that.
Well, that's interesting. But it's only available for people who legally change their gender with a gender recognition certificate, which is actually not the majority of people who are trans-identified. And actually, and again, the majority of trans-identified people who get a GRC, a gender recognition certificate, have not actually had any surgery or anything, may not even have taken, any drugs to try and change their appearance. In which case, what's the point of the confidentiality? Is it the illusion that people don't know that they are living in a trans identity?
Well, there are some people in that situation. I know of a trans woman who is married to a man, and his family doesn't know that he's married to a trans woman. He does, of course.
He knows he's married to a biological man.
Yeah, but he didn't want his family to know. Now, in that situation, you can see why somebody might want to keep the confidentiality. I think there's good.
But hold on a minute. But why would it not be confidential? I would have thought that if I called up the tax office about my personal tax affairs, that they have to keep my tax affairs confidential, as they would anybody's.
Well, they do. It's not confidential from people who work in the tax office, and it's also employers and people like that who've got access to your tax records as well.
Ah, right. So that would make the difference. I think a lot of people might be quite cross about this, but I would have thought there was things like people who are, for instance, victims of domestic abuse might need this more, so that their ex who's stalking them might not be able to track them down by, for instance, claiming to be an employer or something, or claiming to still be their husband. I would have thought there are plenty of other groups who would be more in need of this.
Well, the group you cited may well have access to it. I do know that people in witness protection, when you're given evidence against somebody, they can have their tax affairs put in this office as well. So other people do.
Yeah, it is just extraordinary. So, do you think this is reasonable? Because one thing actually is interesting. It also includes, it's not just MPs and the royal family. It's also ultra wealthy taxpayers and celebrities. These are the people who get to basically have a one-on-one chat with the taxman when they've got a problem, negotiating their tax affairs, unlike the rest of us who are told pay up or else.
Well, I guess in that case, it does protect people who work for HMRC making prurient access of tax records just to have a look. Because once you're in a special section, they can't do that, and it's only it's a reduced number of tax officers who can see the record.
Who presumably being extra vetted. I mean, we've got a problem with people looking at. I mean, look, we had a load of people sacked from a hospital recently in Nottingham for health workers, doctors even accessing health records of the victims of the Nottingham killer, Valdo Kellicane. I mean, just extraordinary that people would think that was an acceptable thing to do. And thank goodness they've been sacked. But I suppose, you're not going to necessarily trust everybody in the tax office. So do you think this is a reasonable thing? This is a good thing?
Well, it's not something I've ever bothered with. At the time when I transitioned, I looked at it and thought it's potentially more hassle than help. I prefer to do most of my tax affairs online.
Yeah, so you can do access what you want.
Which MFC, the better. Yeah.
Debbie, appreciate you joining us. Debbie Hayton there. Philip Ingram. I mean, Debbie Hayton. I mean, there is an argument. I can see if there are people who are living an existence to where like that. Her friend who, he's a friend who doesn't. His parents don't know that he's married to a man.
Yeah, I think there's rationale behind providing for certain elements of the community It's something that gives those extra levels of protection. Though? Not necessarily.
But shouldn't they just ensure that all the people in the tax office obey rules?
Well, they should do, but the trouble is that doesn't happen.
Like you shouldn't be able to access anything. I've got a friend who works at the benefits office. She can't access any, unless there is actually a case she's working on. She can't just access anyone's.
Yeah, and all of this can be traced and everything else. But I do agree that there should be this special helpline for those that are very high net worth individuals, because they pay very high levels of tax if they're talking to HMRC.
Well, then they should have to wait on the same line. I think I'm a very big believer that services for the poor become poor services, because if MPs had to use, and the people in charge had to use the same
MPs
service,
should have to use the same
well,
service.
if they had to use the same service as us, then they will make sure those services improved, is my view. Yeah. Anyway, we're heading up to the top of the hour. After the top of the hour, we're going to be talking to Lord Hannan, Dan Hannan. What does he make of this? A report about NEETs. 1 in 6 young people very soon are going to not be in work, training or education. What's the problem? How do we fix it? More calls from you as well. This is Talk.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Very good afternoon to you. This is Talk, the home of common sense. 2 minutes past midday is the time. I'm Julia Hartley-Brewer. And whether you're listening on DAB Plus Radio or your smart speaker, watching on YouTube or your connected device, it's always fantastic to have you join us. If you did miss anything from the show, do take a look at my YouTube page, Julia Hartley-Brewer Show. Hit subscribe, never have to miss a thing. Coming up, we're going to be discussing more on this major review, warning that 1 in 6 young people will not be in education, employment or training. They'll be NEETs, as they're called, within 5 years, unless urgent action is taken. Currently, more than 1 million young people aged 16 to 24 are in exactly that situation. What are we going to do about it? Well, Alan Milburn, who is the former Labour Minister, who's the mobility czar, social mobility czar, who's done this report, a later report this year is going to look at solutions. But he says the government must reform welfare or condemn a lost generation of young people to a life on the dole. A lot of you are getting in touch with me about this and asking what the causes are and how do we fix it. A lot of us are saying parents are part of the problem. I'm pretty sure that is not something that is really being tackled head on by Alan Milburn, who says we need to stop calling all these people snowflakes because, you know, they're anxious. Well, who made them anxious? Love to hear your thoughts on all of that. Give us a call, 0344 499 1000. Text the word talk in your message to 87222. Get in touch with us on X at Talk TV. Calls are charged at national rate and text cost 1 standard network rate message. Also, we're going to be talking about Keir Starmer, who's under mounting pressure from his cabinet to rethink their net zero policies. Ed Miliband doubling down after that £221 average increase in your annual gas electricity bill this year, being announced by Ofgem yesterday. But Tony Blair urged the Prime Minister to tear up his green commitments, and many would like them to follow that. Plus, we're going to be talking about a new street in Cambridge, and it's England's first official deep sighs, everyone, cycle street, giving cyclists and pedestrians priority over motorists. I thought those were what we call pavements, but there we are. Judging by the cyclists round my way, that's for sure. Anyway, joining me for the whole show today is Philip Ingram, MBE, former Senior Military Intelligence Officer. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
You're not allowed to cycle on the pavement.
I make this point to at least 20 cyclists a day, Philip.
Yeah. And we have lots of cycle streets around London.
Yes.
You know, I've actually cycled some of them, and they're more dangerous than the roads.
I'd say most of London now is cyclists and pedestrians get priority, but there we are. Let's just slow the entire country down. What could possibly happen to the economy, eh? I really do despair in this country. Well, not Cambridge, you'd expect it. Oxford's just as bad. All these university cities are full of complete lunatics on these things. But there we are. We're going to talk more about Alan Milburn and this report. I do just want to play you a very quick clip, and I'd love to get your thoughts. I'd love to get your thoughts as well. Give us a call, your thoughts on this. Helen Mirren, I mean, basically, you know, Britain's, you know, nation's sweetheart, Helen Mirren, Dame Helen Mirren, no less, the Oscar-winning actress, 80 years old. She's walking along the street in London, I think last night, with her husband, who's the director, Taylor Hackford, rather dashing figure, I have to say, harassed in the street by, guess who, a pro-Palestine activist, calling her, well, he starts off just by calling her a Zionist. By the way, Zionist isn't an insult, people. You're really going to have to learn this. It's not an insult. Proud to be a Zionist. Language then moves on quite a lot. Basically an elderly woman.
Yeah.
You know, with her husband on night out, being harassed in the street. We've had to beep out quite a lot of the words, but have a watch and a listen.
And there's Helen Mirren, the avowed Zionist. She said Israel should last forever because of the Holocaust. And she was very happy the Palestinian houses. You put the post up, you evil old bag. You're an evil Zionist, and you as well, you and all.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell from all the beeps by how many swear words there were. There was B words, and to be fair, and all credit to him. I mean, well, both Helen Mirren and her husband were you know, very dignified there. But her husband, Taylor Hackford, pretty much everything he replied the whole time was F off, F off. Quite damn right. And they'd have got very much more short shrift than that if they'd been talking to me like that in the street. I have had the odd moment with that, and I'm like, come and have a go if you think you're hard enough, really. But this is now the norm. But you've got to go after our nation's sweethearts. You're going to get in trouble, guys.
Yeah, well, it is, but it's a sad reflection on how people have got behind a cause that is backed by terrorism.
Which they don't understand.
This whole pro-Palestinian garbage that's out there has been instigated and is backed by the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, their Quds force, and they've manipulated idiots to start attacking
And that
people
doesn't mean you're not
like
concerned about children and innocent people dying in wars. I'm afraid that does happen. But here's the thing, that often happens if you deliberately put your civilians in harm's way after committing a horrific crime against another country.
And using Hamas's own statistics, Israel has put so much care into reducing civilian casualties to a degree
they claim that there are 70,000 deaths, they think, 70,000 deaths or something in that war. Well, I mean, that's an absurdly low count, but that shows just how many people were evacuated and were not clearly being targeted. But the Hamas has, in their own volition, they had been paying widows' stipends to some 50,000 women.
Yeah, exactly.
So suggesting that 50,000 to 70,000. So we're fighters.
We're fighters for Hamas.
Not the majority women and children.
Exactly.
They literally made up stuff that the BBC, Sky News, ITV, and the Guardian and the Times all happily reported as fact. And it's not. It's made up propaganda from a terrorist organisation.
I have seen on our mainstream press made up videos of casualties where you accidentally, if you play it a little bit longer, you see the dead child that's been carried out scratching his itchy leg.
If you want to find, there's a great go to Twitter feed which is Pallywood, Palestine Hollywood, and the number of these things. I'm sorry, look, you've just been manipulated. You're useful idiots, but you know what? You want to go around shouting at people for supporting the cause of the only democratic nation state in Israel. Yeah, absolutely. Right, I'm going to talk right now to Lord Daniel Hannan. He's a non-affiliated peer. He's an incoming Director General of the free market think tank, the Institute of Economic Affairs. Good morning to you, Lord Hannan.
Good morning or good afternoon, I think it just is now.
Yeah, it's just... I know you were able to see that video we just played and hear it and all the beeping. Just interesting to get your reaction to that. I mean, this is happening to... this is happening to Jewish students, Jewish school children, people who wear, Jewish people wearing kippahs. It's happening, I get a bit of it, frankly, 2 fingers up to those people. I'll, come and have a go. But, shouting and abusing an 80-year-old woman in the street is now what they think makes them the good people.
Extraordinary, isn't it? George Orwell used to say that the most striking thing about English culture was its gentleness, that we didn't scream at each other and attack random strangers because of political opinions in the streets. It's very sad that we've imported so many of these rows. One of the things that I always think is a really under-remarked and rather beautiful thing about Britain is... There were October the 7th level horrors at the time of the partition of India, right? On both sides, really unspeakable atrocities. And yet, when they came here, Brits of Hindu, Muslim and Sikh origin settled together in the same streets, in the same towns, and left it all at the door because we all agreed that we were Brits and we were living together as individuals. Now we seem to be much more in this world of kind of collective blame and, on both sides, actually. I'm angry about this particular atrocity. I can't find the person who did it, so I'm going to take it out on the first Muslim or the first Jew that I see. And that, I think, is a really bad thing. But one thing I've got to complain about here, Julia, you know how much I admire you, but I'm not standing for this claim that Helen Mirren is 80 years old. That is the kind of thing that gives commentators a bad name.
That is fake news. I mean, looking good, girl, looking good, I have to say. Very good point. Now, Lord Hannan, let's talk about what we invited you to talk about, this report from Alan Milburn, long-awaited report. He's talking about identifying the problem. There's going to be another report later in the year about how to fix the problem. 1 in 6 young people, he says, in the next 5 years will be out of work, training or education without any action. He's saying we risk a lost generation of jobless youth. We've already got over 1 million of young people aged 16 to 24 in that situation. He's identified various different issues in terms of cost, hiring people, and mental health and the welfare sort of dependency. How bad do you think the problem is, and what do you put it down to?
Of course it's bad. Anyone who knows people at the starting age, in their early 20s, the late teens, knows that there's been an effective recruitment freeze in huge parts of the economy for a couple of years. And there's no mystery as to why. Number one, the spike in national insurance payments for businesses. This extraordinary idea people have that somehow if you tax businesses, the business pays the tax. I mean, the business no more pays the tax than your TV set pays the license, or your car pays the car disc, or your home pays the mortgage, right? All taxes fall on human beings, and that makes it harder to employ people. Second, the Rayner Employment Rights Bill. I mean, I know this sounds counterintuitive to a lot of people, but if you want to encourage people to hire, you should make it easier to fire, because then they will hire people without needing to worry that if things don't work out, they're going to be stuck with this cost in the long run. And that worked for us, a really, really good formula that worked for us throughout the 80s, 90s and 2000s. We got through the global financial crisis, all the rest of it, with structurally low unemployment until now, because we're adopting a more European style of employment regulation. And then the third one, and this I think is the most unpopular one, the one that politicians particularly hate to mention, but we've had a 2/3 rise in the value of the minimum wage since lockdown. And the idea that you can do that without a knock-on impact on jobs is fantasy. And MPs refuse to talk about this because they are petrified by being asked by an interviewer like you, how would you like to live on £12.50 an hour? But if you think about it, that's an irrelevant question. The relevant question is it helping people into a life of work that will then lead on to other things? And you can almost chart the decline of jobs, especially in hospitality, and a lot of the jobs that you and I and other people started on with those extreme increases in the minimum wage. I remember that the last one, which happened under the Tory government, that both parties have been doing this. I was the only person in the House of Lords who spoke against it, other than on grounds that it should have gone even further.
Yeah.
Because
well, I support there being a minimum wage. There was a lot of talk that there'll be mass joblessness when George Osborne, former Chancellor, argued this. Actually, it doesn't. But it needs to be at a very minimal level. It can't be where it is now, and I don't think that a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old doing the same job as a 28-year-old should be paid the same rate, because clearly they don't have the same housing costs, for instance, and things like that, and they don't have the experience. And if we want young people to be able to get that experience, they're going to have to accept lower wages. I think we're
going to disagree about that, Julia. I mean, if you want to hire me and I want to work for you and you are happy and I'm happy with the terms of the contract, I don't think the government should come between us
because I think
and say we're not allowed to do it.
I think there are exploitative employers, and I think we do need to guard against that for people. But I do accept your point over a certain point, and in terms of all of the things you listed, which absolutely, we can see, it literally played out in real time. We saw the impact straight away of those things, because we had a load of people in government who have no idea at all how a business runs and how, profit and loss. I mean, they clearly have no basic math skills, which is also a case for an awful lot of our youngsters, where we're told, a lot of these youngsters, they've got graduate degrees, they've got pieces of paper, they're applying for loads of jobs, and they're still not getting jobs. But we've also got a lot of young people who've got mental health problems they are claiming to have, disabilities, which they say a massive explosion in those in ADHD and autism and things, depression, anxiety, which they say prevents them from working. Do you think that is something that should prevent young people from working? Do you think that we are overdiagnosing this? And are we making it too easy for too many people, both young and old, but particularly young, to go on welfare just basically for life?
We're definitely making it too easy. 3,000 people a day are signing on as long-term sick. And common sense tells us that they can't all suddenly be incapable of working. I mean, I think two things are going on. I think there was, because of the lockdown, an element of genuine increase in anxiety and depression, because we kept on telling people that if they set foot outside their house, there was this terrifying virus out there. And I think that had an impact. Also, though, this is the undiagnosable black box way of getting signed off. It used to be back pain. Now, by far the most common claim that people make when they want a long-term sick note is mental health problems. And you don't have to spend long online to see videos coaching people in how to qualify for personal independence payments and other kinds of welfare. You have these very helpful online influencers saying you get X number of points for saying that you can't sit still, and X number of points for saying you have trouble dressing yourself, and so on. So we know what's going on. But you see, it doesn't really matter whether people are genuinely suffering from mental health issues or whether they're skiving. Both ways, the answer is surely to be in work, right? If you genuinely are suffering, in most cases, there are a few exceptions to this, but a lot of people who have anxiety, depression, or other mental health issues, the best thing is to be in a place where you're needed, where people are relying on you, where you're in a routine, you're surrounded by other people, and you're focused on something other than your own problem, which is never great, right? So either way, whether it's genuine or whether it's Rabsy Nesbitt, people should be in work. The trouble is, a lot of the people whose job used to be to do the assessment and to kind of help and hassle people, combined help and hassle back into the world of work, they all started working from home in lockdown. And we've never really recovered from that.
Yeah. I mean, that was a big issue. I mean, again, even like assessments, so people will be signed off for a short period, but you basically keep it until you're reassessed. Those reassessments have got 2 or 3 year backlog by someone working from home who's probably swinging the lead themselves. Who are we kidding? I mean, there's just there's such a litany of problems. We need a sort of a massive big shake-up. But I don't think we've got a choice about whether we have that shake-up or not, because it's basically long-term major decline, or we have the shake-up. What do you make of things like the role of schools and families? It's really interesting that, both Philip Ingram and myself and the younger people in the office are all saying about, work ethic, the expectations of life, your willingness to, do a fairly mundane dog's body job to make your way, to do as you're told, turn up on time, turn up every day. Yes, it's raining, you still turn up. Might have a hangover, might have a few sniffles, still turn up. We say, well, this all came from our families. This this expectation. And how many families now, don't even send their kids to school if they don't feel like it? How many schools, basically allow pupils, everyone can get an extra hour in an exam because they've claimed that they've got some sort of mental health issue or some sort of issue that means that they need extra time. Are we not in a sort of a cotton wool excuses culture that, even though Alan Milburn has said in the last 24 hours, these are not a nation of snowflakes, we have created an entire generation of snowflakes?
Well, culture is a product of institutions. Culture isn't some numinous entity that hangs disembodied alongside our institutions. When people talk about culture, they just need to look at what the incentives are. I suspect your first job was probably what we would now call a minimum wage job. Mine was. I was a waiter in a golf club, right? And the point is, it teaches you to turn up on time. It teaches you that you're in a contractual relationship with an employer. It's not like your parents who are going to, make excuses for you. And you understand that it leads on to things, right? And for most people, you're not going to be forever a waiter in the same golf club, but you're more employable as a result of having done something. I think we've been really slow to admit the level of damage that was done by the excessive lockdown. And I don't just mean in the obvious way.
But wait a minute, but this hasn't happened in other countries. We haven't got this mental health crisis and the unemployment as resulting in other countries that had even stricter lockdowns than us.
So what was different here, right? We had a much more generous furlough scheme. We have longer commuting times. We had a unique situation in the summer of 2021 when people were not coming back to work. We've got issues, and I'm not just talking about the obvious points of debt and inflation and all the things that come from having borrowed from our future selves. I'm talking about the truancy. I'm talking about the antisocial behaviour which started in lockdown, the shoplifting, the litter. I'm talking about the collapse of productivity, especially in the public sector, because people have just not come back to work. By the way, a really tough one. Even the Boris wave was a product, to some degree, of the lockdown. I'm not saying it was a good thing. It obviously brought more problems than it solved. But the people who moan about it imagine that Boris kind of inflicted it on the country in some moment of sadism. They have forgotten what it was like in the summer of 2021 when there were vacancies and jobs wanted signs in every shop window, when the pubs couldn't reopen because there were no chefs, when there were no hauliers. So all of this was as a result of our having messed up the lockdown, where, if you like, we're still suffering a long lockdown, not long COVID, but long lockdown. And the first step to getting out of that is admitting the problem, admitting that we made a bunch of decisions that were sold to us as temporary and contingent, and that we need to wind them back. That at the very least, we need to get government spending back to where it was in February 2020.
Which would be a mind-blowing change of where we are. And a lot of this, again, it hasn't happened under Labour, it happened under the Tories. Again, would have been massively encouraged by the Labour, who wanted more and more and more. But at the end of the day, there's a really good friend of mine who works in a benefits office, and I've always said, how can you tell people who want to work? Because one of the things that Alan Milburn has said was that, we poll these young people and they say they want to work. They want to work. And I was like, well, yeah, they say they want to work. Are they willing to do the jobs that are actually available to them? And are they going about it the right way? And would they actually turn up every day? We had an employer earlier at Butchers, people they literally just don't. They don't turn up to the interview, or they don't turn up to the actual job, or they just come in when they choose. And I just worry that actually, we're in a situation where we've just got a whole generation of young people who say they want to work, they talk a good game, but actually they don't want to do what is necessary to get a job or keep a job.
Well, not if you can earn more in the way that these online influencers tell you can, by a combination of sickness benefits, child benefits, and so on.
Well, this is it. So the people who didn't return to work properly after lockdown, say my friend in the benefits office, I digress, saying, I said, how can you tell if someone wants to work or not? She says, well, they go and get a job. They give away when someone wants to work, they find a job. That's the giveaway. And I know there are parts of the country where there aren't many job opportunities, but there are an awful lot of parts of the country where there are plenty of them. I think if you're unemployed in London, I'm sorry, you just ain't trying. It is as simple as that.
I think we have been here before quite recently, right? So there was a massive problem of long-term unemployment under Gordon Brown because of the way he did the tax credits. An awful lot of people basically stopped working full-time or stopped working legally. A lot of them were still working in the black economy. And that was actually resolved remarkably successfully in the early 2010s by just making two changes. One was to increase the personal allowance so that you would keep everything up to Well, it's now, I mean, I think it was initially £10,000, it's now more. And second, to cap welfare so that you could not earn more than the average working household. And those two changes on their own massively shifted. I mean, I was very aware of this as an MEP at the time. When I was campaigning, I'd end up speaking in, golf courses, hotels, and
golf courses have come up a lot lately.
Well, suddenly. But there was a very, very striking... In the 2009 election, everyone that you dealt with in those places was Polish or Lithuanian. Yeah. Every waitress, receptionist, barmaid. Suddenly, in 2014, you were hearing the local accents everywhere because it made sense. If you were a single mum and you could maybe work 20 or 25 hours a week, you got to keep most of it. It suddenly made sense. So when we talk about the culture, when we talk about have young people got the right attitude, we have set the incentives wrongly, and we are continuing to make them worse because, frankly, we have MPs who now, in a number of constituencies, know that the number of people claiming benefits is bigger than their majority. And so whatever they think about the rights and wrongs of helping people back into work, they are not prepared to take benefits off people who are keeping, as they see it, keeping them in their own jobs.
Very, very good point. Dan Hannan, really good to talk to you. Lord Hannan is incoming Director General of the Institute of Economic Affairs. Thank you very much. Look forward to having you on the show when you're in that role. Philip Ingram, I mean, we do cover a lot of ground there. But, I mean, and again, the lockdown issue. But, loads of countries had lockdowns. And they had different impacts, like for instance, on long COVID. East and West Coast of America and London and the home counties has long COVID. Nowhere else does. But, I mean, we have peculiar incentives in our system for people to stay at home and do nothing.
They make it too easy in this country to be woke. We just need to be harder on people, and we need to start looking at some of the lessons that have come out from other countries in Europe. Even before COVID. If you look at Germany, and I lived in Germany for 13 years. If you sign on for unemployment benefit, you're given it for a set period of time. You have to apply for, I think it's 3 jobs and prove that you've applied, and not just I've sent the form. But if you don't get a job after the 3 that you apply for, you will be given one because they control all the vacancies. And if you don't take that, you lose your benefits.
And if you don't turn
completely. And if you don't turn up, you lose your benefits completely.
Again, it's certainly for, I think it's different if someone just maybe redundant off 50, at the age of 50, and then trying to find a role that they,
doesn't matter. They apply the same.
Exactly. But I think that's different from someone. You haven't got any particularly useful skills. You got no experience. We're going to give you a job, and it will be good for you. And you turn up, or you know what, your parents are going to have to pay for you for the rest of your life. Good luck, parents, with that one. Maybe you should have done your job better.
And I'd add in then, if that doesn't work, we then send them into the military because our military is suffering.
Military doesn't want them.
Recruiting crisis.
Could military sort them out?
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that'd be fun. I feel a documentary coming on. 12:26 is the time. I'm going to take a quick break. Let's get to some of your calls. 0344 499 1000. What is the problem and how do we fix it? Give us a call. This is Talk.
The UK on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:28 is the time. Let's get straight to your calls about these NEETs. These are young people 60 to 24, not in education, employment or training. Big report out saying how terrible it is, but they're not a nation of snowflakes. A generation of snowflakes, says Alan Milburn. But I kind of think they are, but I think it's kind of not their fault. I think we're down to society generally, schools, but I think ultimately it's down to the parents. What do you think? 0344 499 1000 is the number to get in touch. Graham has done that. He's in Staffordshire. Hello, Graham.
Hi there, how are you?
Very well, what do you want to say?
Well, I think a lot of this goes back to John Major and Tony Blair. Went back to when Tony Blair, John Major decided to call polytechnics into universities, and then Tony Blair came up with a nonsensical idea of 50% going to university. It's an absolute joke. They could cut the universities down to 50%, and quite honestly, I used to teach. I remember when I used to teach when...
Graham, hold on a sec. We've had some... Can you just step, like, a metre to your right or your left? Because that nearly always solves a problem with a bad phone line.
Hang on a moment. You tell me when it's better, would you?
No, I can't hear you still. Oh, look, we'll try and get you back on the line. I'm so sorry. Anyway, not a fan of the universities. I'm agree with you in terms of the 50%. I mean, it's madness. Peter is in Yorkshire, wants to have his say. Peter, I hope you're on a better phone line.
Yes, I think so.
Perfect, yes. What do you want to say?
I want to say something about the attitude to work. What people don't understand is that the only time that success comes before work is in the dictionary.
Love it. Love it. You've got that. You've got that embroidered on something in the kitchen, haven't you?
But, I mean, I left school at 16 with 1 O level. By the time I was 30, I'd got a degree in engineering. I'd become a chartered engineer, and I was an associate partner in an old consultancy.
Wow. You were not born with a silver spoon in your mouth, is my guess.
No, I was born in a terraced house, and my parents were working class.
So, OK, we're told that this generation have got it really hard. They've gone through lockdown, which was devastating for a lot of young people. And I've got really good friends who've definitely got a work ethic, whose children are utterly devastated. Right. So I'm not pretending that didn't happen, but I just don't think it's on the scale that people say. But we're told they've got social media, they've got all these other pressures, and it's a harder time for them. Do you agree with that?
It is a harder time for them.
Is it?
But their parents have got to sort something out, but they've got to sort something out themselves. And we've got to provide the opportunity by having the jobs for them. And the problem is we keep importing all these people to stop them having the jobs.
Yeah, I just don't understand. You brought in, what was it, 4+ million came in under the Boris wave. A lot of those are dependents, they're not actually workers. But ever since Tony Blair was in power, we've just imported millions and millions of people, a lot of them workers, who are willing to work for less, who've got experience, and then they wonder why no one bothers training up the young people. And send them to university for a few years so we don't have to have them on the unemployment rolls. That's what that was about. And then they come out and they're unemployed.
Yeah, let me tell you something else.
Yeah.
It's also about people who send them to universities to do a degree.
Yep.
I had a friend who told me that they'd kicked off 30 people from an MSc in engineering, and because they've been advised to do maths with statistics rather than applied engineering. If you can't do applied engineering, maths, you can't do engineering at all.
So they basically didn't have the qualifications to do that course?
They had a 3A stars, but these teachers had told them to do maths, statistics instead of applied maths.
Right.
What a set of bonos.
Yeah. Well, again, they just don't know. I think because that A level is easier.
Oh, it is. It was because it was easier. Yes.
Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it? It's terrible. Thank you for that. Appreciate your call, Peter. Afraid we can't get Graham back on the line. Apologies for that, Graham. Do call in again. But Andrew's on the line in Hertfordshire. Hello, Andrew.
Hi, Julia.
Hey.
Very, very interesting. The reality of it is unfortunately, we created a group of people who were highly educated with nothing to do. And that was the clever thing with Blair and Brown. They made sure they weren't on any numbers. They were at university.
Yeah.
And now, the real thing that's stuffed it up was putting national insurance up.
Yeah.
If you'd driven that down, you could have got growth.
Yeah.
And that's the root cause of the problem.
Yeah, and that's not a political point. That's been identified by international, IMF, OECD, people that saying that we have been impacted on our economy because of those specific tax measures.
And I did a lot of work many years ago on multi-jurisdictional payroll.
Get you.
Trying to sell it. Yeah, trying to sell a solution around that. And what people do in large organisations, they see where it's most economic for the best return to create either a solution or a product. That's why things are manufactured in China.
Yep.
So we now are unattractive as a place for jobs.
Yep.
And the illusion that the Labour government have that isn't the root cause, that's going to bring us down.
Absolutely, and the other thing, not just national insurance, is the cost of energy, 4 times higher than in many other countries, particularly for industry. We're going to talk about that up next with Net Zero Watch's Maurice Cousins over, interestingly, Keir Starmer being pressurised, well, not just by Tony Blair, but his own ministers, to rethink the licences for North Sea drilling. A big thank you to Andrew. Thank you very much for a lot of your calls. Lots more messages to come as well. Right now, before we go to a break, though, got a very nice competition for you. The FIFA World Cup 2026 is almost here, thanks to Adidas, the tournament's official match ball supplier. Our friends at TalkSport are giving you the chance to be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas to see England v Croatia live on June the 17th. If you haven't got a friend, I'm volunteering my services. With return flights, accommodation, spending money, tickets and your very own Adidas official match ball, Trionda, be at England's first game and the FIFA World Cup at one of the world's best stadiums. Ready to get that winning feeling? Here's how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Good afternoon. Welcome back to the show. 12:37 is the time. Well, we're talking about, why you can't get a job if you're a young person. And one of the reasons, not just national insurance, not just snowflake generation, is actually there are limited jobs to be had because, well, basically manufacturing, industrial jobs kind of pretty much disappeared from this country. Why? Well, because of the high cost of energy. Well, net zero is largely to blame for that, despite whatever Ed Miliband claims this week. And we saw that price cap on your gas, electricity, domestic bills go up by £221 on average over a year. That was the announcement from Ofgem, the supposedly regulator of our energy bills, yesterday. That's going to kick in from July. But the pressure is certainly on the government to, well, drop a lot of these net zero pledges. They were completely signed up to by the likes of Theresa May, Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer. Ed Miliband, absolutely the net zero secretary, convinced by them. However, criticism from Tony Blair in his long essay about the woes of the Labour government yesterday. He called for them to walk away from those pledges. And now we're told there is pressure within the cabinet for Keir Starmer to drop those pledges, because the pressure on not just our businesses but on the individual costs of living is getting too much. Well, let's talk about this with Maurice Cousins. He's campaign director at Net Zero Watch and joins us now. Very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Thank you for joining us. Very well. Well, you guys and me at here, we've all been saying for a very long time, net zero policies do not survive contact with reality. And reality has hit big time, and it not just with the Ukraine war, but now with the Iran conflict, the impact on energy, and all of these international bodies saying that we are uniquely hard hit because of our energy policies. The pressure is mounting. Are you hopeful that we might see some element of sanity from Keir Starmer in dropping these policies and restarting, more new licences for drilling for oil and gas in the North Sea?
Well, it's certainly looking like Ed Miliband's ideological net zero policies and his anti-North Sea argument is collapsing. He's looking increasingly isolated, which is encouraging. But obviously, the thing that we should all be worried about is Labour backbenchers, because they have a unique capacity of delaying engaging with reality longer than everybody else. So it's encouraging. It's great that we've got allies like Tony Blair now coming out and fighting in our corner. We're the new centrists.
Oh, well, we've always been. My only worry is you sort of think, well, the facts will tell us this isn't going to be good for the economy. But the facts have always told us. I always worry, if you are going on the facts, well, they weren't listening to the facts. I mean, look, these are people who think, a man can be a woman and things like that. I mean, they're clearly not big on facts. We already know that. But the reality is the British public has been sold a lie on this, and poll after poll, people say, well, people are in favour of net zero policies. Are you concerned about climate change? Yes. Do you think we should have policies that limit time? Yes. And when people are asked how much are you willing to pay for those policies, I think the limit has been, I think £10 a year. I genuinely think there was a survey that suggested when people were told, oh, you'd have to have a heat pump and it would cost you, £8,000, twice as much as a boiler, and it would cost more to run, or you have to buy an electric vehicle and they cost more. They don't want to buy those. They don't want to have it. When they're told they have to pay more for a flight abroad, they don't want that either. And actually, you pay more on your energy bill to subsidise green energy. It turns out when people say they're concerned about it, they don't really mean it.
No, you're right about that. I mean, a lot of the polling shows that, and focus groups show it as well, which is that people actually like the idea of doing something for the environment. Yes. They and in the abstract, they like the idea perhaps of doing something around climate. Yeah. But when it comes to the actual consequences of the policies that are required to get you there, they run a mile. Yeah. When you're told that you can't go on holiday, when you're told that your food shop will actually have to go up because beef and meat and dairy prices will have to rise because we need to shrink herds in order to meet methane targets. People are like, actually, do you know what? That doesn't really sound like a great idea. Yeah. I probably would just like to stick with the status quo if I'm being
But
honest.
Also, most people, I think, despite all of the hysteria we see in our media, and it's across, and we blame the BBC a lot, it's across the media, and frankly, a lot of the papers who should know better have played along with it. And you get these climate correspondents who just, on great time. I mean, they are jet-setting around the world, these people, but apparently very concerned about this. But the stats, and again, the warnings, like, the last week when it's been hot, we're all going to die, it's all terrible, you've got burning inferno on the map, and people are going, well, yeah, it's a bit hot, but I might it might take my week's holiday early, go off work and go down to Bournemouth Beach and have a nice time. People, the average British person is just not, they're certainly not acting as if they believe the hysteria.
No, it's utterly cynical. A lot of the hysteria around things like hot weather, we get this every summer. Whenever there's like a little bit of bout of sort of hot weather, there's a hysteria, and it's totally cynical. It is all designed to create this climate crisis narrative. Interestingly, Julia, you know, we heard a few weeks ago from the IPCC that they had dropped their most extreme model for the climate, the so-called RCP 8.5, sounding very technical, but that's basically the narrative which has been used by the so-called by the climate lobby to rely on when they have been talking about the climate emergency, the climate crisis. The IPCC has dropped that. They said it was.
But this has
We've not heard anything from the BBC or
No, we talked about it on the show when I saw this. But this is the thing. Again, most people, I think. I mean, I don't think Greta Thunberg knows what the RCP 8.5 is, but nerds like us have been paying attention. But just explain just a tiny bit more for people, because when we have all these predictions and you get a report, people go, well, the Secretary General of of these big bodies, and this ICP, international panel, intergovernmental panel on climate change, when they give out these warnings, the key thing is there's a statement, there are press conferences and there's reports bearing often very, very little resemblance to the actual policy document summary. And that policy document summary is basically politically agreed between countries and bodies, and often also bears no resemblance to the actual scientific report. But those scientific reports are largely based on climate models, and RCP 8.5 is like the most extreme possible, planet-burning climate model. Yeah. But it was never, even in its own policy documents, it was never a likely one. It was an absolute outlier. But everything we hear in the media about climate change is based on this very unlikely prediction.
No, you're right. I mean, these were all based on models, and models, they're only as good as what assumptions are there and what you put into them. And sensible people in the environmental space were always very wary about relying on that, because they always thought it was implausible. Yeah. And credit to those people who did speak out about it. But you're right. There were cynical people out there. Your Ed Miliband's of this world, your Greta Thunbergs, your Just Stop Oils, etc., that cherry-picked data that supported their argument but was divorced from actual reality. And now, the IPCC has distanced themselves from it. But this goes to the whole point. It goes to what you were saying earlier on about how illogical a lot of our debate is. The other side they're not engaging with the facts. And the reason they're not engaging with the facts is because they've got a narrative that they want to push for political reasons. Yeah. And so they engage in all the typical tricks that have been going that people like Aristotle would have been very familiar with, ranging from things like your red herrings through to denialism, through to selective framing, conflating immediate causes with ultimate causes.
Yeah. Weather and climate.
They don't have a strong argument. They don't have a strong argument. That's what it boils down to.
But there is a strong argument from ordinary business people and ordinary people paying their bills or having to fill up their cars and things. You can see, for instance, like the Iran conflict can have an impact and things like that. But fundamentally, if they can see data showing an awful lot of what they're paying is tax, and it's paying subsidies for green energy, and we've got warnings from energy companies about blackouts now because of the unreliable energy. When we're told, there might be a load of flights cancelled because we haven't got enough aviation fuel. Well, why not? Well, because we have to import it from Iran. Well, why are we importing our gas and our oil from the same basin that the Norwegians are drilling for, but we're not doing it ourselves? How is that cheaper for us? I mean, people are waking up that none of this adds up and it doesn't make sense, and that warning after warning for what we've had 30-40 years of these warnings about, if we don't act now, then we're past a tipping point. If we don't act now, we're past a tipping point. By this date, there won't be any snow in the Alps anymore. By this date, we're going to be having droughts every summer. By this date, whatever. When it's hot weather, that's climate change. When it's cold weather, it gets a bit rainy in the summer, that's climate change. People are just going, I think you're talking nonsense.
Well, they are. I think, but there is a really important point to be made here. I mean, you talk about how we've had all these warnings on the climate. We have had, though, for decades now, warnings about how precarious we are when it comes to our energy security. Yes. Gordon Brown's government was actually very good on this. They commissioned an excellent review towards the end of their parliament, which Ed Miliband, when he was Energy Secretary, accepted many of the recommendations on that, including, I should add, maximising production of domestic oil and gas resources, maintaining a fiscal regime that would allow us to exploit those resources. This was before we knew about onshore oil and gas. The importance of protecting and looking after our refineries, so that it meant that we can produce things like, you know, your petrol, your diesel, and your aviation fuel. I don't know about you, Julia. I don't store barrels of crude in my house.
Funny enough, no.
You know, we rely on refineries, and unfortunately, we've ignored all that advice. And the predictable result is that we have been left badly exposed in 2022 with the war in Ukraine and again in Iran. And the key point is this is a crisis. These crises are our own making.
Absolutely.
It is policy. You know, no one is going to deny to you that wars can cause price spikes. Of course they do, right? But wars happen. And the best thing that you can do from an insurance policy perspective is to be prepared and to have capacity. But we have hollowed all of that out over 2 decades.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Net Zero Watch's campaign director, Maurice Cousins, thank you so much. Philip Ingram, listening to all of that, it is genuinely painful. This is part of our ability to defend our country. It's about our economy. Do you think the government, do you think Keir Starmer is going to... basically, you know, change it? I mean, he's done a million U-turns already. Do you think he'll drop his net zero policy?
I hope he does. You know, Ed Milliwatt has got some form of control over him, because it makes no sense. You know, if you look at this, take it right back to the basics. They don't understand the economics behind it, because, you know, Norway is getting a sovereign wealth fund by the amount of money that we are putting into buying crude from them out of exactly the same North Sea oil wells that we have drilled into. They're making money of it. They're putting into sovereign wealth fund, and somehow or other it is not going to be good for our economy as well. The logic just doesn't exist.
Genuinely painful, isn't it? But again, if they were looking at facts, they'd never have signed up to net zero, and the previous governments as well. 12:50 is the time. We're going to take a quick break. Well, this will be something that the net zero lot will like. England's first official cycle street is being built in Cambridge. It's giving cyclists and pedestrians priority over motorists. I thought that was all streets these days. We're going to talk about this with urban transport journalist Laura Laker. This is Talk.
Welcome to Down the Local, the show that goes from pub to pub across the country, speaking to the punters about the subjects driving us all nuts at the moment.
Rachel Reeves, Rachel Thieves, Rachel McCounts.
I don't really know Meghan Markle. I know Meghan Markle's from Seats. That's about it.
I don't know about anyone else, and I don't know where this is going. I have 0% beard, and I feel
raising the flag, I think, is symptomatic of this desperation.
Is public transport good value for money?
No, it isn't.
You really don't like speaking to people.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Good morning, welcome back to the show. 12:52 is the time. Let's talk about cyclists. Oh, my favourite people, especially when they are going at very, very high speed on the pavements. Well, they don't need to in Cambridge anymore because England has now got its first official cycle street, which gives cyclists and pedestrians priority over motorists. It's a £2 million overhaul of Adams Road. That's a lot of signs, isn't it? Which is one of the busiest cycle routes in University City. It's removed on-road parking and reconfigured junctions to slow traffic. Raised crossings, wider footpaths have also been installed for pedestrian safety. It's along a 500-metre stretch of road, and this is from the Greater Cambridge Partnership Project, and obviously inspired, we're told, by Dutch works, and it's taken 7 months to complete, but motorists will have to give way to cyclists while still having access to the road. Is this the future of our roads in cities? I fear it is. Let's talk to Laura Laker. She's a journalist and writer specialising in cycling and urban transport. A very good afternoon, Laura.
Hi, nice to be on.
Thank you for joining us. I have to say, I was already under the impression, as someone who rarely drives a car actually, but that actually cyclists and pedestrians already had priority over most of our roads now, don't they?
Well, I mean, in the highway code, there is a hierarchy that says that when you're driving, you should take special care to give space to people who are walking and cycling, and then if you're cycling, you give special care to people who are on foot. And so it's kind of already there in the rules of the road, and it's kind of common courtesy, isn't it, that when we're out and about, if I'm driving, I take special care, not to intimidate anyone on the roads and to be careful. And so, yeah, I think it's kind of common sense that we behave. Well,
it would be nice if people did do that. I mean, I want to be honest with you. I don't see that courtesy from cyclists very often. I think that new rule where pedestrians have the right of crossing the road over someone pulling into a junction, I think is crazy and actually quite dangerous for motorists. But the thing is, we don't actually see those sort of rules being equally applied, do we? Because of course, motorists are they're in a big battle box. They're safer than pedestrians and cyclists, and therefore need to take care. But they also, if there's a licence plate, they can be easily identified. Whoever's driving that car, or the person who owns that car, is going to be responsible for anything that's happened. And yet we don't see that with cyclists in particular, who often can be going faster than cars on the street. Who who don't take any care but aren't identifiable and are causing problems and disruption, and often, frankly, are not as considerate of either motorists or pedestrians. So why should they be given priority in a road when actually an awful lot of people need their cars?
Yeah, I think it kind of goes back to the idea of who's causing the risk on the roads, and 1,700 people a year are killed on our roads, and that's people driving who are causing the collisions.
The vast majority of people on our roads are drivers rather than cyclists.
Yeah, that's true. And then there's 20,000 serious injuries, and these sort of life-changing injuries. So there is a substantial risk that is caused, and that's why there's a license, and that's why people are on the roads, in a licensed capacity. And if they don't behave themselves, then that's rude. But when you're cycling, ultimately, cycling is such a positive thing. It's good for our health. It's good. It's a joyful thing. And there's so many benefits.
You say that, but I think you're saying that as a young.
And it makes it quite difficult for people to take it up. And where do you stop? Do you make children be licensed? It doesn't make any sense. And I think with any good transport system, you don't just provide for one means of transport. You've got the motorways and the A roads for the fast, long journeys. Yeah. You've got the residential roads for the short trips. And, on those residential roads, you want people to be able to have a choice. And I think this is really important, something that's quite lacking in our transport system. Most people want to cycle, actually. You talk about identity.
No, they don't.
Actually,
no, Laura.
No, they do.
Laura, you're confusing.
I mean, the statistics,
Laura, my darling, you are
done
confusing.
Research on this.
I know there's plenty of research on it. Laura,
it's
Laura, you can keep
you might
saying
not want
it,
to, and that's
but it
totally
doesn't.
fine.
Laura, you can
but the fact is,
just keep saying
it's a great thing to
Laura,
do.
You say, Laura,
children can cycle to school. That's fantastic.
Stop.
If children can walk to school, that's fantastic.
Laura, us calling Laura. Laura,
prioritising
most people
safety
don't
on the road.
Just going to carry on. We'll just carry on, Philip. You and I just chat. Laura,
people can walk and cycle.
Can you just turn her mic off so we can actually... Laura, people say they want to cycle. The way of giving away whether what people want to do is whether they actually do it. And even when our roads were made much more cycling friendly, it's a tiny percentage of people who cycle. You may say that might because it's dangerous. Well, yes, but we do need cars on the road. We need buses on the road. The vast majority of people in this country need to drive to work. A lot of them, they'd love to. I'm very lucky. My daughter got to walk to school. We live within 10 minutes. A lot of people don't live within 10 minutes or even half an hour's walk of school. They can't do that. They've got to get to work after going to school. They use their cars. They're not young, healthy people who can just, put their cycle kit on and go and cycle along a nice flat road to their workplace that's 20 minutes away. That's not how most people live. That's how some young people in central cities live. But it's not how the vast majority of people live. We can't run the entire country around 25-year-olds in Lycra.
No, and that's not what happens. And, if you have been to the Netherlands, you'll see all sorts of people riding and walking, and you get elderly people on bikes. Yeah, but the Netherlands wasn't the Netherlands in the 1970s. They're the way they are.
People compare London to Amsterdam. Amsterdam's got a population of 75,000.
I know, but the fact is, nobody's being a fundamentalist about this. It's not, every journey people are going to be cycling or walking. It's about, it's coming back to my point about a good transport system that gives people choice. At the moment, people don't have choice. And,